United States may have to go to war against Iraq. President Bush will tell an audience in Cincinnati, Ohio tonight that military force is his last choice. But the president will say that doing nothing about Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction is not an option. White House correspondent Suzanne Malveaux is traveling with the president and has the story from Cincinnati. Suzanne?
Well, Lou, the president is making his case to the American people here in the heart of America in Cincinnati, Ohio. He's been practicing that speech all day. We're told it's going to be 25 minutes at prime time, 8 o'clock. That it is really going to be a comprehensive argument, is what White House aides are saying, about the threat of Saddam Hussein, not only to the United States, but also to the rest of the world. Now, while White House aides are saying there's not going to be any type of new explosive evidence against Saddam Hussein or any kind of new policy initiative, they do say, however, he's going to answer some questions from his critics as well as from other Americans about why the urgency, what is the threat. Excerpts taken from the speech say the following. The president is going to say, while there are many dangers in the world, the threat from Iraq stands alone because it gathers the most serious dangers of our age in one place. By its past and present actions, by its technological capabilities, by the merciless nature of its regime, Iraq is unique. He will go on to talk about Saddam Hussein, saying the time for denying, deceiving, and delaying has come to an end. Saddam Hussein must disarm himself, or for the sake of peace, he will lead a coalition to disarm him. Now, the president also giving this speech to put a bit of pressure on Congress. As you know, the debate continues, the House and the Senate, to pass their own resolution giving the president the authority for military force against Saddam Hussein only if necessary. He is hoping that he will get a wide margin of support, that will embolden the administration to go before the United Nations Security Council. They also considering a resolution authorizing military force against Saddam Hussein if necessary. As you know, France, China, and Russia all have expressed reservations about that. The president just hours ago calling Russian President Vladimir Putin not only to wish him a happy birthday, but also to make his case. Lou?
Suzanne, thank you very much. Suzanne Malveaux with the president tonight in Cincinnati, Ohio. The speech by the president at 8 p.m. Eastern will be carried, of course, here live on CNN. The Senate today resumed debate on a resolution authorizing military action against Iraq. Lawmakers are expected to reach agreement, and soon. But still, there are dissenting voices, including that of Senator Edward Kennedy. Jonathan Karl joins me now from Capitol Hill with the story. Jonathan?
Well, Lou, this debate over the Iraq resolution will dominate the agenda in both the House and the Senate all week long. The House will get around to voting on Thursday. The Senate may wait until next week. The debate is going on right now on the floor of the Senate. If you look at the floor right now, you see Senator Arlen Specter, Republican, making the case, like all Republicans in the Senate have been, for the president's resolution. But there have been some significant voices of dissent. You mentioned Senator Edward Kennedy, one of many Democrats, many of the top Democrats in the Senate, that have raised questions about whether or not it's wise to go to war against Iraq right now.
We can deal with Iraq without resorting to this extreme. It is impossible to justify any such double standard under international law. Might does not make right. America cannot write its own rules for the modern world. To attempt to do so would be unilateralism run amok.
But much of this debate is really Democrat against Democrat, as the Democratic Party is deeply divided on the question of this resolution, but most Republicans lining up solidly with the president, including Senator Pete Domenici of New Mexico.
When Hitler flaunted the terms of the Versailles Peace Treaty, France and Britain did nothing to enforce it. When Hitler occupied the Rhineland and the Anschutz in Austria, no nation tried to stop him. Instead, the world repeatedly gave in to an obnoxious, aggressive leader to avoid war. I see the next Hitler in Saddam Hussein.
Well, Lou, as you know, that was not Pete Domenici. That was actually Senator Ted Stevens, Republican of Alaska. And tonight, Lou, there is no formal Democratic response to the president's speech, but by a coincidence of timing, Joe Lieberman has a speech scheduled for tonight on Iraq, where he is going to be addressing the question of what to do in post-Saddam Hussein Iraq. It'll happen right after the president's speech at 8:30. And to give you a sense of what he's got to say, Lou, he's going to be saying in some excerpts we've received here, quote, "We cannot be content tearing this brutal dictatorship down. We must also help build something better in its place." So Joe Lieberman is talking about the need for the U.S. to commit resources to rebuilding Iraq after war. Lou?
And of course, Senator Lieberman supportive of the president's desire for a resolution
Very
on
much so.
Iraq. Jonathan Karl, thank you very much. Our senior political analyst, Bill Snyder, joins me now. Bill, why does the president feel he needs to address the nation, particularly tonight?
Well, you know, Lou, that the White House has been undertaking a full court press on this Iraq issue ever since Labor Day. But our polling shows that the president has not been making a lot of progress on this. Take a look at these figures. Back in the early September, 58% said they favored sending ground troops into Iraq. Now it's a month later, just 53%. Still a majority, but the point is public sentiment is moving in the wrong direction from the White House point of view. The war in Iraq is losing support, which is why I think the president believes he'd better go to the people tonight.
Well, he's going to the people. Does he have also another audience, another constituency here?
Absolutely. One person in particular, and that's Tom Daschle, the majority leader of the United States Senate, Democrat. He controls the agenda with his party in the United States Senate. They're taking up the issue this week, and that's tougher for the president because Democrats are the majority there. Daschle has expressed a lot of questions, reservations. He said on CNN this weekend he raised a lot of issues, unresolved issues, like how long will we be there? What kind of cost will it entail for the United States? What kind of framework can be established for governing Iraq after the war is over? He said, quote, those are the kinds of things that have yet to be addressed satisfactorily, and it's why many of us continue to ask questions. So Bush is going to be aiming his remarks tonight really at mobilizing public sentiment to get a message through to Tom Daschle, get this resolution passed.
There is, it seems to me, Bill, here also an interesting confluence. The National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, talking about the democratization of Iraq in a post-Saddam Iraq, of course. Senator Tom Daschle talking about that as well. Senator Joe Lieberman, as Jonathan Karl just reported, talking about that aspect that Senator Lieberman will stress tonight, the post-Saddam Iraq. Does that suggest that we're seeing a coalescing here amongst Democrats and Republicans on this issue?
Well, that's what everyone is concerned about, essentially the day two question. Once we've overthrown Saddam Hussein, you know what happens? Any government of Iraq that succeeds Saddam Hussein will have been elected by us. We're responsible for everything that happens politically in Iraq. So we'd better do a good job of that. You know, back in the Gulf War period, a lot of people were wondering why didn't the first president, George Bush, finish the job? Why didn't he get rid of Saddam Hussein? Well, he's since written and been quoted many times as saying that he didn't want to assume the responsibility for running Iraq. Well, now we're going to have to once this war succeeds, and that's something that's being brought up now because we better decide how we want to do that.
Very well. Bill Snyder, as always, thank you very much for your insight. Well, exactly 1 year ago, the United States began its airstrikes against the Taliban and al-Qaeda forces in Afghanistan. Today, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld said that U.S. forces will track down any Taliban and al-Qaeda leaders who remain alive. Senior military affairs correspondent Barbara Starr has more for us now. Barbara?
Lou, good evening. Well, you know, 1 year after the U.S. began its bombing campaign in Afghanistan, there are some notable successes. The Taliban are gone, and much of the al-Qaeda network is on the run from Afghanistan. But the question that has come up again today, what about Osama bin Laden 1 year later? Now, this past weekend, just as the 1 year anniversary of the war unfolded, the Arab television network Al Jazeera released another audio tape. They said it was bin Laden's voice. That has yet to be verified. But in part, what this audio tape said was, quoting the man purported to be bin Laden, Islamic youth are preparing for you what will fill your hearts with horror. At the Pentagon today, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld said again, a year later, no one knows if bin Laden is dead or alive, and he seemed to downplay the tape as possibly having been recorded months ago. But he reminded the Americans that the victory in Afghanistan as it now stands has come at a cost. 53 Americans, including the CIA agent Michael Spahn, having died in this war. And with the Taliban and the al-Qaeda gone, the mission for the 10,000 American troops still in Afghanistan has changed somewhat in recent months, Rumsfeld noted. He said that there is, in fact, less combat, more work on the humanitarian mission, the rebuilding of Afghanistan, stabilization and security. And he insisted that at the end of the day, it is that stabilization mission that will make the mission in Afghanistan succeed over the long run. Here's what the secretary had to say.
The reality is that you could stick 500,000 troops from 20 countries into Afghanistan and you wouldn't necessarily improve the security circumstance as long as you've got Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Pakistan and Iran and porous borders.
But Lou, what is the most amazing is just a year later, the war in Afghanistan, almost today at the Pentagon, seems like history as the Pentagon and President Bush get ready to take their case to the American people for the next war, the war in Iraq. Lou?
Barbara, thank you very much. History that, of course, is still being lived by the U.S. forces who remain in Afghanistan. And Barbara, I suppose we should also just one addendum, also the coalition forces who have died along with those 53 Americans in the war against the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan. Barbara Starr, as always, thank you for that excellent report. France today sent a team of anti-terrorist experts to Yemen to investigate an explosion on a French supertanker. That explosion caused a huge fire on the tanker as it waited off the coast of Yemen, about 350 miles east of Aden. Authorities say that one member of the 25-person crew remains missing. French officials initially said the explosion followed a suicide attack, but there is now speculation that the source of the blast was inside the ship. The USS Cole, of course, was badly damaged in a suicide attack in the port of Aden 2 years ago. The White House today called on Israel to take every measure to prevent civilian casualties, but it did not criticize Israel for its raid against Gaza early today. In that offensive, 14 people were killed, another 100 wounded. The Israeli army said the raid was aimed at the terrorist infrastructure of Hamas in the Palestinian town of Khan Yunis. Palestinian sources said all the casualties were civilians in a crowd outside a mosque. Israel said most of the dead were armed men who were killed in battle. Turning now to the Moneyline poll from last Friday. In that poll, we asked the question if you would support higher pay and benefits for enlisted military personnel, even if it meant your taxes would increase. The response, 73% of you said yes, 27% said no. And today, the U.S. Supreme Court announced that it would not hear the Republican challenge to the New Jersey Supreme Court decision that allows Frank Lautenberg to replace Bob Torricelli as the Democratic nominee to the U.S. Senate. The question tonight is, do you agree with the U.S. Supreme Court decision allowing the New Jersey Supreme Court to change the state's ballot? Cast your vote at CNN.com/Moneyline. We'll have the preliminary results for you later in the broadcast. And on Wall Street today, another decline. The Dow falling, in fact, to a new 4-year low. Retailers, financials, semiconductors, those sectors all dragging the markets lower for a fourth straight session. The Dow Jones Industrials fell almost 106 points. The Nasdaq fell 20.5 points, while the S&P 500 dropped just over 15 points, losing 2% on the day. Still ahead here, a 13-year-old boy was shot outside his school in suburban Maryland today. Police now say this shooting is connected with the sniper attacks in the Washington area last week. We will have the very latest for you. And President Bush is setting the stage to intervene in the West Coast port dispute. We'll have a live report for you from the port at Long Beach, California. All of that and a great deal more still ahead here. Moneyline will continue in just a moment.
This portion of Moneyline is brought to you by GE Financial. Look for GE Financial's retirement sweepstakes at money.com/retirement.
Everybody wants to retire. But who can predict the market?
It's scary.
What if Social Security isn't enough?
Oh, you're kidding, right?
What if interest rates fall?
It's so complicated.
Retirement raises a lot of questions.
Where am I going to get that kind of money?
How much?
How much? I am not ready for this.
That's a lot of money.
Woo.
Now GE Financial has a way to help. It's a simple new way to provide for your retirement called GE Retirement Answer, a variable annuity. Call your financial representative or 1-800-THINK-GE and say you want an answer. The GE Retirement Answer.
Live CNN Tonight, President Bush speaks to the nation in a special edition of Connie Chung Tonight. Aaron Brown and John Keane join Connie for complete coverage, 8 Eastern.
My goal is to get our public schools back on the right track. For me, it's ABC. A, adequate funding. We need to provide reliable budgets for our schools. B, bring dollars into the classroom, not the bureaucracy. Let's put the money where it'll do the most good. And C, college or career. Every kid deserves a chance to reach their full potential, whether that's college or technical school or vocational training. I want kids to say, I'm prepared. I went to school in Oregon.
Customers come from all over the state to visit Hillsborough Chrysler and Jeep simply because we offer more than 5 acres packed with new Chryslers, Jeeps, and quality used cars and trucks. But we're also known for something else, payments people can afford. Pick a brand new Wrangler or 03 PT Cruiser for just $199 a month. Brand new well-equipped Grand Cherokees and Town & Countries are just $349 a month. So see us today at Hillsborough Chrysler and Jeep. Nice people, great prices.
CNN.
Opinionated television that hits from both sides.
Sorry debate from the left and the right.
Crossfire, weeknight 7 Eastern on CNN.
President Bush today took the first step toward reopening West Coast ports. The president appointed a fact-finding board to determine the economic impact of what is now a 9-day lockout of those ports. The president took action after talks between federal regulators and the parties broke down last night. Casey Wyan reports from Long Beach, California.
10 days into the West Coast port shutdown, the White House took action. President Bush created a board of inquiry to report on the lockout's impact, the first step toward ordering shippers and longshoremen back to work.
Factory workers are being laid off because they can't get vital parts delivered on time. These layoffs will only increase if the ports do not reopen this week.
As early as Wednesday, the ports could be reopened under an 80-day cooling-off period, and both sides would be ordered to resume negotiations with a federal mediator. Those talks collapsed late Sunday night, with the union rejecting the shippers' latest contract offer.
My message last night to the union, I think, was very, very simple. It's time that we put the interests of ourselves to the side and start thinking of the interests of the American people, and let's open our ports. They said no.
The union walked away from a deal that included salary increases for full-time longshoremen to between $114,000 and $137,000 a year. Employer paid health coverage with no worker premiums, a $1 billion contribution to the union's pension plan, and a guarantee that no union jobs would be lost to new technology, the key issue in the dispute.
The technology jobs that they talk about, again, are nothing more than a disguise to have others do our work.
Meanwhile, 200 ships, 10,000 dock workers, and 1 million cargo containers sit idle up and down the West Coast. Even if the ports are reopened this week, shippers say it will take at least 6 weeks to unload the backlog of containers, and that's assuming that dock workers don't engage in any more work slowdowns. Lou?
Casey, that seems an extraordinarily generous offer by the shippers. I'm not certain I'm entirely clear on why they would not be satisfied with the language on not losing any jobs to technology.
The union has stuck by its position from the very beginning that any new jobs that are created as a result of this new technology that's being brought into the ports, or that the shippers want to bring into the ports, also be union jobs. So they want to expand their job base by what the shippers say is about 200 positions. The shippers say that those are management functions and they don't want to give them up to the union. Lou?
Okay, so that is ultimately the issue that we're confronting here tonight, at least the union and the shippers, and the rest of the country awaiting a resolution. Casey Wyan from Long Beach, thank you very much. The federal government today forecast a substantial increase in winter fuel costs, regardless of whether there is a conflict with Iraq. The Energy Information Administration said consumers will pay between $100 and $300 more this winter than last. For those using heating oil, bills are expected to rise by as much as 45%. Natural gas users are expected to pay about 20% more, and consumers using propane gas are likely to pay 22% more. Officials blame tighter world oil supplies and forecasts for a colder winter than last year. Tonight, Maryland police are saying that the shooting of a 13-year-old boy today is connected to a string of deadly sniper attacks in the Washington area. The boy today was shot in the chest outside his middle school in Maryland. Doctors say tonight he is in critical but stable condition. Bob Frank has been covering this story and joins us now from Bowie, Maryland. Bob?
Let's give some perspective here. I wanted to show right over there, right over my right shoulder, is where the boy was shot. 13-year-old student. His guardian had just let him off. Suddenly he collapsed, and that is where police have been focusing that general area of the investigation. You can look over a little bit further and you will see some police evidence type vehicles. And in the woods there, they've been searching. They've had bloodhounds going through that area. They've been going door to door. Similarly to my left, there's also been a similar kind of search. You can see there's a fairly wooded area. They're trying to find out where some sort of sniper might have operated. Now, what we do know, according to the police, after a day-long investigation by them, what they're now saying is that their forensic tests are showing that there is a connection between the shooting here and the other ones that have really caused quite the jitters throughout the Washington area. We're in Prince George's County, Bowie, Maryland, to be specific. It is right next to Montgomery County, where on Thursday 5 were killed, and that's right next to where somebody was killed in the District of Columbia on Thursday night. And of course, then on Friday, a woman was shot in Virginia, about 35 miles away from the Washington area. Police say that it looks like all of these are connected. As far as Prince George's County is concerned, parents were brought in to bring their children away from this particular school. They came streaming out along this way. They were actually quite calm. The other schools in the area were left open, but under what they've been calling a code blue, meaning that the children were locked inside and all but people who were authorized were locked outside. School was let out at the end of the day. You saw quite a few police vehicles accompanying the buses. There is no announcement that we're aware of yet about schools opening tomorrow, although officials were saying that in all probability the best place, the safest place for the kids to be would be inside a protected school. Meanwhile, there's a lot of coordination going on between Prince George's County and Montgomery County, which is the county adjacent to here, and the District of Columbia. President Bush has weighed in and said that federal officials, federal investigators will help every way they can. Lou?
Bob, the role here of alcohol, tobacco, firearms, the FBI, the federal agencies that could be providing significant support and investigative help.
Well, they could. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, of course, has an expertise in guns that is unmatched. ATF is relied on all the time by police agencies. Their forensics people have been brought in. They're the ones who, in fact, got the bullet remnants from Prince George's County Police after the surgery for the 13-year-old at the Children's Hospital Center in Washington, where he'd been taken. The child is in critical condition. Doctors say that they don't normally remove remnants like this, but because of the investigation, they did. The FBI, its technology, its expertise, all of that being brought to bear here.
Bob Franken, thank you very much. Just ahead tonight, the Supreme Court returned to work today for the fall season. One of its first decisions to refuse to hear a challenge by New Jersey Republicans. Our legal analyst, Jeffrey Toobin, will be here to put this in perspective and give us the analysis. The space shuttle today, like you've never seen it before, and incredible pictures of today's liftoff of the space shuttle Atlantis. Those images, those stories, and a great deal more. Still ahead. Stay with us.
33,000 miles of timber and steel, from Portland to New Orleans, from Los Angeles to Chicago, and the beauty of a land that spans half a continent. It's been said that in those 33,000 miles of rail, you can feel America's pulse.
The Power of Caring, brought to you by Cigna. His dedication to baseball is unmatched, playing more consecutive games than any other professional player in history. But Cal Ripken Jr. is also devoted to inspiring kids. Through the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, at-risk kids utilize baseball to build character and leadership.
What I'd like to do for the youth is to promote the passion and the fun of the game of baseball.
For more on the Power of Caring, log on to cnnsi.com/caring.
He's worked almost 40 years. She's worked almost 40 years. And during that time, they've gone on walks together instead of cruises and shared secrets together instead of champagne, just so that someday they could retire and be together all the time. At Cigna, we care about the retirement dreams of over 5 million people. After all, there are dreams true. Cigna, a business of caring.
I love you.
Bad timing can cost you.
I love you too.
That's why Ameritrade offers a 10-second guarantee to complete your trade. Because timing is everything. For our 10-second guarantee and 25 commission-free internet equity trades, visit Ameritrade.com and open your account today.
The Supreme Court's new term began today. CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin joins me now. And Jeffrey, just as you called it last week, the Supreme Court apparently didn't want to touch that challenge by Republicans in New Jersey.
There will be no sequel to Bush v. Gore, and I think perhaps everyone is a little relieved about that. The court took such a beating, it was such a focus of political anger, that I think it is not terribly surprising that unanimously they decided to stay out of the New Jersey Senate race and basically accept the argument. We don't know exactly what their thinking was because they didn't write an opinion, that this was a state matter, state law, nothing for the federal justices to do about it.
And conveniently, they're not involved in another election.
That's right. They're happy to stay out of it, yes.
Reasoning. Also turning down other appeals, what other development today caught your eye with the Supreme Court?
Well, today was a day where they sort of got rid of a lot of the chaff. There was a case involving Richard Jewell. Remember him, right. The guy who was falsely accused of the bombing in Atlanta. He had a libel case that is still kicking around. He lost a procedural argument, but the real big cases are still to come.
And is it your expectation we'll see significant judgments and decisions this term?
Two big ones, I think. Affirmative action. The court is going to probably take its biggest affirmative action case since the Bakke case in 1978. The University of Michigan admissions practices have been challenged. The courts below have really taken on the argument, is the Constitution colorblind? There are at least 3 votes, probably 4 on the U.S. Supreme Court to say affirmative action that considers race in education is simply unconstitutional. Sandra Day O'Connor will probably decide whether affirmative action still exists. The other one is the McCain-Feingold bill. That bill is on a fast track to be reviewed. There are a lot of constitutional questions about whether those restrictions on campaign contributions are constitutional. That'll be up for the justices probably early next year.
An infringement of free speech.
That's right. Unusual coalition there. You have the lawyers for fighting McCain-Feingold. You have Kenneth Starr, who needs no introduction, right. And Floyd Abrams, the famous liberal First Amendment. So they are both saying the laws are unconstitutional, and they may have a pretty good argument.
Well, the good thing is there's no pressing urgency here in terms of McCain-Feingold because our representatives in Congress and the Senate were wise enough to make this not go into effect until after this election.
That's right. They want to get reelected first, then we'll worry about it.
Jeffrey Toobin, thank you. Now, a reminder, our poll question tonight is, do you agree with the U.S. Supreme Court's action allowing the court to change the state's ballot, permitting Frank Lautenberg to seek another term in the Senate? Cast your vote at CNN.com/Moneyline, and we will have the results coming up for you here in just a few minutes. Next, the president tonight will argue for firm action against Saddam Hussein. I'll be talking with 2 national security experts, Max Boot and Professor John Mearsheimer. They'll debate what they think the president should properly do. We'll have all of that and a great deal more when Moneyline continues in just a moment. Stay with us.
It's in 9 out of 10 of the world's largest telecom carriers. 5 of the top 6 U.S. internet service providers, and 4 of the largest local phone companies in the U.S. What are these companies building into their business? The network capacity they need when they need it, from a network company they can rely on. Level 3 communications, the network partner you can rely on.
This just in. TBS Superstation just got a whole lot funnier.
Somebody pitch me. Thanks, Malcolm.
We put television's greatest comedies all together in one place. It's TBS Superstation's non-stop comedy block. The Drew Carey Show, Home Improvement, Friends, and Seinfeld. Now that's news you can use. TBS Superstation's non-stop comedy block. Weekdays at 4:30 Eastern. Informative? Not really. Funny? Heck yeah.
The market is brought to you by Fidelity Investments, because you're not just invested, you're personally invested.
Roll over your 401k?
Of course.
But it's not like you're going to let it just sit there.
No, you're going to push it and prod it and make demands on it.
Then you're going to put it in the hands of money managers
who won't give it a moment's rest.
Yeah, you're going to roll over your 401k.
You're just going to make sure it doesn't roll over and play dead.
Call a Fidelity retirement specialist to roll over your 401k. Because you're not just invested, you're personally invested.
President Bush will make his case for tough action against Iraq in his speech tonight in Cincinnati, Ohio. That'll be coming up in just about an hour and a half here on CNN. The president is hoping his speech will win over those who are undecided about the need for regime change in Iraq. Joining me now, two guests who have decidedly different views on the matter. Max Booth says it's time for change in Iraq. He's a senior fellow at the Council of Foreign Relations. John Mearsheimer says containment works and should be continued. He's co-director of the program on international security policy at the University of Chicago. John, good to have you with us. Let me turn first, Professor, to your view that action is not appropriate in this case. Why not?
Well, my basic view is that the United States should continue its policy of containing Iraq. The idea that Saddam Hussein represents a threat that we cannot contain, I think, is wrong-headed. Arguments that he's the second coming of Adolf Hitler make little sense, and in fact we've done a very good job of containing him for the past 12 years, and nothing has changed in recent years to make me think that we should alter our policy. In fact, if anything, he's gotten weaker over the past 12 years, and he's easier to contain now than he was in 1991. Furthermore, you want to take into account the fact that there are significant costs associated with going to war against Iraq. It's not going to be cost-free by any means. First of all, we're going to end up owning that place and occupying and running it forever. And secondly, it's going to detract from the war on terrorism. And for that reason, I think we ought to continue the present policy of containment and not start a war against Saddam Hussein.
Max, the professor makes a cogent argument. What do you think?
Well, I wish I shared his certainty that we are in fact containing Saddam Hussein. I wonder what Professor Mearsheimer would have said on September 10th, 2001 about Al-Qaeda. Would he have said that we were containing Al-Qaeda? It certainly looked that way on September 10th. Things looked a lot different the following day. The question in my mind is, are we going to have to see a mushroom cloud over Manhattan before we realize that we are not containing Saddam Hussein? That's a risk that I'm not willing to take, and I think we need to act preemptively before he acquires nuclear weapons to go along with his chemical and biological stockpile.
Professor Max Booth introduces the issue that obviously cannot be answered because there have not been weapons inspectors in Iraq for 4 years. How do you respond to that concern and that fear?
Well, the argument I would make is that there's a fundamental difference between Al-Qaeda and Iraq. There's no question that Al-Qaeda cannot be contained. Al-Qaeda has to be destroyed because if they get their hands on weapons of mass destruction, especially nuclear weapons, they'll use them against the United States. We have to find Al-Qaeda and we have to crush them. But Iraq is a very different matter. Iraq is a state that has a vested interest in surviving. Saddam Hussein has a vested interest in surviving.
Well, again,
if he has nuclear weapons and he uses those nuclear weapons against the United States is going to instantly vaporize him.
Well,
for that reason, he's not likely to use nuclear weapons.
I wish it were so simple, but how do we know that we'll be able to instantly vaporize him if instead of shooting an ICBM at us, which he doesn't have, instead he slips a suitcase nuke to an agent of his who then sets it off? Or even worse, if he uses it to deter us and to say, hey, I've got nuclear weapons and I'm going to throw my weight around the Persian Gulf and you can't stop me because you don't want to be vaporized. Those are all risks I'm not prepared to take, and we just don't know what's in Saddam's stockpile. What we do know is that he has a long record of attacking his neighbors, of using chemical weapons against his own people. This is not a guy whose good intentions I would trust, and I don't think that we can live with him in the region anymore.
May I ask you both, I'm sorry, Professor, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that description of Saddam Hussein is wrong. Saddam Hussein
He hasn't attacked his neighbors?
He's been in
power. He hasn't attacked his neighbors?
Excuse me, I'd like to finish what I have to say. I listen to you, you can listen to me. He's been in power for 30 years, and during those 30 years, he's attacked his neighbors 2 times. The second time he invaded Kuwait in 1990, he asked our permission, and we gave it to him. In the first instance, he invaded Iraq.
We did not give him permission to invade Kuwait. That's not the way the history happened. And the notion of saying, oh, he's only, what you're basically saying is he's only invaded his neighbors twice. He's only used chemical weapons against his own people, so that's no big deal. 2 invasions, is that what he's allowed? 2 years and 2 invasions in 30 years?
May I try this, gentlemen? Let me ask you this because we're running out of time. And I'm going to ask you precisely the same question, just inverted. Professor, is there anything the President could say tonight that would change your mind? And if there is, what would it be?
Well, all the evidence is that he's not going to present any new evidence tonight. He's just going to rehash the old arguments, string them together, and do his best to convince doubters in the country that we should attack Iraq. But the basic storyline from the Bush administration and from critics like myself has been out in the public record for weeks, if not months now, and
no, I understand,
people pretty
Professor,
much
but
know where the...
I understand. But is there anything he could say that would change your mind?
I think the answer is no.
Max Boot, I would ask you the same question. Is there anything that would change your mind that would suggest greater patience here?
I think we would have to see a very different Saddam Hussein than the one that we know and hate from the last 30 years, and I think that's extremely unlikely. So unless he suddenly has a personality transplant, I think we have no choice but to change the regime in Iraq by force.
Max Boot, John Mearsheimer, thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate you sharing your views with us tonight.
You're welcome, though.
Coming up next, WorldCom's former accounting director has entered a plea to charges that he inflated profits. Jan Hopkins will have the latest for us in Corporate Crime Watch tonight. And the spectacular pictures of the space shuttle's launch from Cape Canaveral. We'll have that, a great deal more, still ahead here. Stay with us.
How do I make sure the portfolio I built can provide income for my lifetime?
Tax-deferred annuities can be a smart addition to your retirement plan. A Merrill Lynch financial advisor might suggest annuities as a way to both preserve your assets and provide you with income well into the future, so that you can start looking forward to all your tomorrows. There's always a smart place for your money. Together we can find it.
Carry any weapons?
I am the weapon.
The WB presents the world premiere, Birds of Prey. This week on the WB Wednesday.
Once a year, the world's most influential business and political leaders meet at a unique event. The Fortune Global Forum, the most exclusive gathering of its kind. An unmatched opportunity to exchange new ideas. This year in Washington, D.C., a focus on new business realities, security and restoring investor trust. World leaders brought together to create a path into the future. The 2002 Fortune Global Forum, presented by Fortune magazine.
This is a press conference being held in connection with the sniper shootings. This coming to us from Montgomery County, Maryland.
Shooting of a young student in Prince George's County has brought this case to a new low. We've got a lot of questions today about whether we're frustrated, about whether we're disappointed and discouraged. And let me assure you, we are not frustrated. We are not disappointed. We are not discouraged. We are angry and we are outraged that someone would do this to our loved ones and our neighbors. And we're channeling that anger and outrage into even greater determination and resolve to find out who's doing this and to bring them to justice. And you're going to hear in a few minutes about an unprecedented level of cooperation and determination among our federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. And just as these law enforcement agencies are doing their part, we're asking the public to step up and do its part as well, particularly as it relates to our schools. Tomorrow morning, the Montgomery County schools are going to open up on time. They're going to open up Code Blue. We're asking parents to come and serve as volunteers. We're asking parents to walk their children to school, to be with their kids as they go to school. We're asking parents to serve as safety patrols. We're not going to have our young students standing out on intersections as safety patrols. We need parents to step up and do that for us. We are taking our recruits from our police academy, we're taking our recruits from our fire academy, and asking them to do that as well. We need everyone to do their part to bring this killer to justice. And if we can all, step by step, bit by bit, do something to make this a safer community, then we'll be able to get through tonight, we'll be able to get through tomorrow as a safer place. And now I'd like to call on our Police Chief Charles Moose to give his update
of what's happened in the last few hours. Chief?
Thank you, sir.
Let me start by making a few introductions. Certainly like to introduce Superintendent Maryland State Police, Colonel Dave Mitchell. His troops have been with us, very visible from the very start. My state's attorney, Montgomery County Attorney, State's Attorney Doug Gansler. Special Agent in Charge, ATF, Michael Brochard. U.S. Attorney for the State of Maryland, Thomas DiBaggio. Assistant Special Agent in Charge, FBI, Baltimore office, Kevin Lewis. Police Chief, Prince George's County Police Department, Gerald Wilson. Police Chief, Metropolitan Police Department, Washington, D.C., Charles Ramsey. In terms of an update, many of us know by this time that the shooting this morning in Prince George's County is linked. The ballistics, the evidence, the science tells us that. I'll ask Chief Wilson to provide a brief update with regards to that situation.
The Prince George's County Police Department continues to request assistance from its residents in providing information that may help us to close the case that we have open related to the shooting of the student this morning. We recognize that the student is still fighting for his life.
This press conference, Chief Gerald Wilson, Prince George's County Police, talking where the 13-year-old boy was shot this morning outside his middle school. We will be returning to that press conference as soon as any developments should warrant, that is, any news that will advance our understanding of what is happening there. And that press conference, again, coming to us from Montgomery County, Maryland. We want to turn now to Wall Street, where the damage continues, the carnage, in point of fact, continues. Another losing session on Wall Street. $185 billion of market cap today erased. Christine Romans is here with a continuation of the bad news.
It really is. You know, Sears is the latest. It warned. It hurt all the retailers. The NASDAQ hitting a fresh 6-year low. But, I mean, consider this. The NASDAQ was born, I guess, in 1971. We've seen a string of 6-year lows now. Never in the history of the NASDAQ have there been 6-year lows. We've been hitting them every day. So it sort of shows you kind of a period we're in here.
Well, that certainly, as if we needed it, more indication of just how much damage has been done on the NASDAQ. But how deep is the damage? Is there another way to measure this in terms of the overall markets?
Well, you look at some of the big, important stocks in this economy, the GE, IBM, General Motors. Some of these stocks are down so sharply. General Electric is at a 1997 low. General Motors at a 1995 low. JP Morgan at a 95 low, and IBM at a 1998 low. And look at how they've come just this year from their 52-week highs. That's not even considering from the peak hit in 2000. So some deep, deep pain felt in those stocks. And those are stocks that are in a lot of different mutual funds, a lot of different portfolios.
And the stocks in the Wilshire 5000?
1,600 stocks are 90% off of their 52-week highs.
Say that again.
1,600 are off of their peak from this move. $7 trillion in market cap has vanished. So just in the last couple of years, it's been really painful. And, I mean, you have to look all the way back to 1929 to 1932 to get an accurate representation of how long the duration of the bear is. I mean, we are now a 33-month bear market. That puts us already worse than 1973 and 74. You've got to go back to the 34 months back in the 1920s. You know, that wasn't a very happy time in the markets or in the economy back in the Great Depression. Recall. Absolutely. And here, consider this. In 1932, from high to low, the Dow fell 42% in 1 year. 42% just in 1932 from high to low. That was a very painful move. So there are a lot of people on the street who seem to say that, you know, we've seen such a bad performance in the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P that perhaps the worst has run its course. I mean, if you were to translate 42% losses in 1 year for the Dow, you'd be talking about 4,500.
I'm glad you put that equation in there. Of course, we had a 40% loss in the NASDAQ back in 2000, and everything's just improved from there, so we don't have to worry about this year, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Christine Romans, thank you. Coming up next year, Jan Hopkins will have our Corporate Crime Watch. Stay with us.
Live CNN Tonight, President Bush speaks to the nation in a special edition of Connie Chung Tonight. Aaron Brown and John King join Connie for complete coverage, 8 Eastern.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Could you give us a second? Well, I guess this is it. It's not your fault. It's just that there are kids now. We had good times. You're a good car.
At Tonkin, we'll ease you gently from one love to another because we know how it is with cars.
For 25 years, we've been offering hair loss information to millions of men and women who have been seeking a solution to thinning hair. Whether you're 25 or 65, you'll be amazed at how good you can feel with more hair. So don't put it off another day. Call 1-800-HAIR-CLUB now. Consultations are free, so get ready to look great and feel better than you've ever felt before. And you can take it from me, because I'm also a client.
Watch the Hair Club Hair Loss Seminar on Cable Channel 15 every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night at 7:30.
21 years ago, Ted Kulingoski proposed legislation so anti-business it would have killed Oregon's job market. Today, nothing has changed. Kulingoski supports hundreds of millions of dollars in new income and sales taxes, tax increases that'll stifle business growth and job creation. And Kulingoski says the economy isn't as bad as people think. Ted Kulingoski. A step backward Oregon just can't afford.
AT&T Broadband.
Entertainment. At AMC Network, we're so passionate about monster movies. It's scary. Presenting MonsterFest 24/7. All your favorite monster movies 24 hours a day for 7 days. Catch MonsterFest 24/7 on AMC from AT&T Broadband.
Serving the Tualatin Valley, we're AT&T Broadband.
This is CNN.
This is CNN.
Preliminary results of our question tonight. Do you agree with the U.S. Supreme Court's decision allowing the New Jersey Supreme Court to change the state's ballot? 52% said yes, 48% said no. And of course, you may vote through the next 23 hours, and we will have the results for you tomorrow night. WorldCom's former accounting director Buford Yates today pleaded guilty to securities fraud and conspiracy. He told a federal judge his supervisors ordered him to artificially boost WorldCom's profits. Jan Hopkins is here with the Corporate Crime Watch. Another development.
That's right, Lou. This is the second guilty plea at WorldCom. Also, we've already had the former controller, David Myers, plead guilty. Prosecutors seem to be following the strategy of having the little guys turn against the top brass. And after the hearing today, Buford Yates' lawyer said he's been cooperating with the feds for 2 months.
He was ordered to make certain accounting adjustments in the financial statements issued by WorldCom. He strenuously objected to making those adjustments, and when he raised those objections, he was told that they had been approved at the highest levels of WorldCom management.
Now, this could be a problem for Scott Sullivan, the former CFO of WorldCom. He's already been charged, but so far he says he is innocent of charges. And it could be a problem for the former CEO, Bernie Ebbers. He has not been charged in connection with fraud at WorldCom. And we understand that WorldCom's board, Lou, is going to be meeting tomorrow and will again take up the issue of Ebbers' $1.5 million a year severance package. The board wants the money back.
Well, you wonder if there wouldn't be a problem for the board as well in all of this. Jen, thank you. Well, Yates has already been added to the Enron Corporate America criminal scoreboard on the first charges. He's one of 25 charged. The number of Enron executives remains at 2, and it has been 309 days since Enron filed for bankruptcy. Philip Morris says it will appeal the unprecedented decision of an L.A. jury to pay $28 billion in punitive damages to a woman suffering lung cancer. Philip Howard says the verdict does not serve the common good, and he is here now. Phil, $28 billion, impressive.
Yeah, first let me say that while my firm's not involved in this case, or I'm not involved at all, we do work for Philip Morris. just so your
That's
viewers know.
Excellent disclosure. It would be more impressive if you were saying something against Philip Morris.
Right, exactly. Well, there are a lot of people who think that tobacco is an evil empire and ought to be put out of business. But the right place to do that, if that's the right answer, is in the legislature, in Congress. I mean, this is, if this verdict held up, she would own Philip Morris.
But aside from that issue, Philip Morris and a lot of others have very strong lobbies, and some in Congress have very weak stomachs.
That's true, and we have a democratic process that works through all those things,
Absolutely.
and we either get the vote or we don't.
And this punitive damage, this is gigantic. Whether your firm works for Philip Morris or not, and even though you're unrelated to the issue, what do you think is the appropriate?
Well, there's this very important case that the Supreme Court's hearing this year on punitive damages. I mean, clearly money no longer means anything in this country. Verdicts come out not just in tobacco but everywhere, and we have to put controls on what juries are doing because they're not supposed to run the country.
Well, they're not supposed to run the country. The damages, no matter how much one's heart goes out to the victims of tobacco in this country, that's a huge amount of money. But at the same time, Philip Morris has lost, and other tobacco companies have lost large decisions, but they haven't paid any money. Does it really matter here?
Well, it does matter in terms of how people view the system of justice. Is it fair? Is it reliable? Do people know where they stand? And so I suspect most people don't really care about Philip Morris as a tobacco company, but they may care when one of their employees sues them for $1 million or $10 million for punitive damages because of an ordinary workplace disagreement.
Phil Howard, as always, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Crossfire begins in just a few minutes. Let's go to Paul Begala and Bob Novak in Washington. Paul.
Lou, big night on Crossfire. We will have Richard Pearl, the chairman of the President's Defense Policy Board, one of the chief architects of America's policy in Iraq.
And on Capitol Hill, the debate on authorization for war for the president began today, and we'll continue the debate with a Republican senator and a Democratic congressman, Lou.
That's the kind of balance that we all expect on Crossfire, gentlemen. Look forward to it. Thank you. After technical problems and severe weather conditions, the Space Shuttle Atlantis today took off. The shuttle, carrying a crew of 5 to the International Space Station. Once there, they will install a large extension. You're looking at the Space Cam, the first time it's been used aboard the Space Shuttle. It will be used to support a car, which will transport spacewalkers, tools, and the robotic arm. This new camera, placed on the shuttle's exterior, actually on the solid fuel booster, provided a compelling view, to say the very least, of the spacecraft as it lifted aloft. The shuttle fleet had been grounded for almost 4 months after cracks were found in fuel lines. Last week, Hurricane Lily caused Mission Control to scrub the launch of Atlantis, the first time that's happened in the history of the space program because of weather conditions in Houston, not Cape Canaveral or Cape Kennedy. Coming up next here, the Dobbs Report, I'll have a few thoughts about New York's Attorney General Eliot Spitzer and the forces he's confronting. We'll also have your thoughts. Stay with us.
Closed captioning provided by Oric 8-pound upright vacuum.
Looking for a lightweight vacuum that's really powerful? Try my Oric XL free for 30 days. Nothing gets by an Oric.
This is where it begins. Quest DNA. The molecular infrastructure of your network. The genetic model for all your communication needs. Protected by a virtual immune system created to fend off viruses. This is Quest. One reason more than half the Fortune 500 ride the line.
While you were out, life called.
Life called.
And guess what?
You're late.
Because you're trying to be everywhere, do everything. What you need is some serious money management.
Experts who can create a model portfolio.
Then manage it based on your investment objectives.
The money management pros doing what they do.
You
doing what you do.
Fidelity's Funds Manager Program, a portfolio of mutual funds designed to manage for people like you. Call Fidelity, because you're not just invested, you're personally invested.
In the mood for a little excitement? Well, how about a subscription to USA Today? Call 800-USA-4229 and get 4 weeks free, 17 weeks for the price of 13. And if you call now, we'll also send you this deluxe road atlas and trip planner free. So what are you waiting for? Call 800-USA-4229 now. Go on, live a little.
Today's most intelligent investment. It's not a company. It's not an index. It's a partner. Your financial advisor. Let your advisor be your guide. Dreyfus. Time-tested strategies for investing, no matter what the times.
The Dobbs Report is brought to you by Dreyfus. You, your advisor, and Dreyfus, working together to achieve your financial goals.
New York's Attorney General Eliot Spitzer has conducted himself and his investigation of Wall Street in stellar fashion. Spitzer deserves great credit for the $100 million settlement with Merrill Lynch in the analyst conflict of interest case. He deserves great credit for pressing the investigations of IPO allegations by Solomon Smith Barney and CS First Boston. And Attorney General Spitzer has Wall Street more than just a little nervous about what he'll do next. And now the Attorney General has me just a little nervous as well, but for entirely different reasons. Wall Street is anxious that Spitzer will force institutions there to change the way they do business. In effect, reinstitute the separation between brokerage and banking as required by the now defunct Glass-Steagall Act, and to permanently separate investment banking and research. Sandy Weil, the head of Citigroup, which owns Solomon, is working hard to come up with a global settlement for all of Wall Street with both Spitzer and SEC Chairman Harvey Pitt. That pressure, particularly upon Spitzer to agree to a global settlement, is now enormous. Wall Street and the commercial bankers are warning that such permanent reform could well do more damage than good. They're clucking loudly about damage to the capital markets of this country. Those would be the same capital markets that have cost investors in equities $7 trillion over the past 2.5 years. Of course, the bankers and the brokers are also the heart of the establishment in this country, with considerable influence on political fortunes, whether Democrat or Republican. That would include the political fate of the ambitious Spitzer. Now, there's nothing pejorative about the word ambitious here. Thank goodness politicians of Spitzer's character and ability have aspirations and ambition, and therein lies the reason for my nervousness. I hope that Mr. Spitzer will be able to withstand the forces now arrayed against him. I hope the Attorney General realizes he alone has a singular opportunity to create real reform and to perform a historically profound service to the nation, real reform of Wall Street and these markets, to set new standards of conduct and accountability on Wall Street, and while doing so, just maybe put himself well beyond the moneyed establishment's implicitly threatened constraint on his aspirations for higher office. Now for a look at your thoughts. Many of you write to us about Friday's report on low pay in the military. Carol in Colorado wrote to say it's absolutely pathetic our people in uniform who put their lives on the line are so underpaid, while CEOs and professional athletes are paid too much money and get away with bad behavior and illegal activities. What's wrong with this picture? Lee in New York wrote, military salaries are an embarrassment. We should roll back President Bush's tax cuts and use that money to increase pay for a living wage for all volunteer forces. I, for one, would be happy to give back that $300. And Earl in Washington offered another solution. Why should those who serve or have served pay for their own pay raises? It would be better to make the military pay tax exempt. Send us your thoughts at moneyline@cnn.com. Include, please, your name and address as well. That's Moneyline for this Monday evening. We thank you for being with us. For all of us here, good night from New York.
Crossfire. On the left, James Carville and Paul Begala. On the right, Robert Novak and Tucker Carlson. In the Crossfire, is war the only answer? The debate's in full swing.
We can deal with Iraq without resorting to this extreme.
The questions keep coming.
Who would govern after Saddam was toppled? And what would happen in the region?
Tonight, the president gives the country a comprehensive update.
I think you're going to hear the president tonight, in fact, lay out an awful lot of evidence.
Will your questions be answered? Tonight on Crossfire. From the George Washington University Paul Bagala, and Robert Novak.
Welcome to Crossfire. Tonight, one of America's leading war hawks helped set the stage for President Bush's speech on Iraq. We'll also ask what's going on behind the scenes as Capitol Hill debates the use of force. But first, as we do every day, we're starting with the most forceful political briefing in television, our Crossfire Political Alert. The U.S. Supreme Court today refused to review the New Jersey Supreme Court's trashing of state law to benefit Democrats. That means replacing the fast-fading Senator Robert Torricelli on this year's general election ballot with 78-year-old former Senator Frank Lautenberg, even though the deadline for such a change had passed. Republicans have one appeal left to New Jersey's voters. A Quinnipiac University poll shows the rookie Republican Senate candidate, Doug Forster, is only 4 points behind Lautenberg. And the voters think the last-minute change was unfair by a 14-point margin.
Well, you know the Republicans hated it when this switch happened, but even the United States Supreme Court, led by Thief Justice Rehnquist, who stole the election from Al Gore, couldn't steal this one. So now we'll have a fair election. You're right. The voters should decide. Well, President Bush plans to address the nation in less than an hour. He'll be pressing his call for military action against Iraq. Mr. Bush will be speaking from Cincinnati, Ohio, which is a major city in a key swing state. Not that any of this, of course, is political. While he's in Ohio, Mr. Bush may find that unemployment there, which was 4.3% under President Clinton, is 5.5% today. Mr. Bush has not offered an economic recovery package, but he would like the 325,000 Buckeye residents who are out of work to know that Saddam Hussein is an evil, evil man. Of course, they already know that. What they don't know is why President Bush, who speaks with such passion about the suffering of the Iraqi people, is so blind to the economic suffering of Americans.
Paul, if the people of voters of Ohio were so unhappy with the Republicans, they could vote for a Democrat for governor. Instead, they're going to re-elect Bob Taft for another term by a big margin. Erskine Bowles, President Clinton's former chief of staff, is careful about using the name of his ex-boss in his uphill campaign in North Carolina for the U.S. Senate. A mailer from Bowles to African-American voters prominently features a photo of Bill Clinton. An otherwise identical mailer to the state's white voters omits the former president's smiling face. After all, Bill Clinton was snowed under by white voters twice in North Carolina as he lost the state in 1992 and 1996, the second time losing to Bob Dole, who is the husband of Bowles' opponent, Elizabeth Dole. So far, Bill Clinton has proved the political kiss of death for his former aides.
Now, I think Erskine Bowles got a great shot in that race. Once people find out that Elizabeth Dole and her support for privatizing Social Security is the real issue. Well, our Washington area here in the Capitol is besieged these days by a sniper. In the past week, 6 people have been killed, 2 more wounded, in apparently random shootings by someone with a high-powered weapon and a twisted mind. This morning, a 13-year-old boy was shot in the chest as he was being dropped off at his middle school in the Washington suburb of Bowie, Maryland. Police have few leads in the case. Technology exists, though, to set up a ballistic fingerprint system that could trace bullet fragments to a particular gun. But because of heavy lobbying by the National Rifle Association and other right-wing groups, it is illegal for federal law enforcement officials to set up such a database. Shame on the far right.
You're talking about what amounts to national gun registration, and of course the liberals will take any tragedy to try to reduce the freedom of the American people. Terry McAuliffe, the multi-millionaire wheeler-dealer buddy of the Clintons, who is now chairman of the Democratic National Committee, has been roaring around Washington in his chauffeur-driven Cadillac Escalade SUV. But thanks to John McCaslin of the Washington Times Inside the Beltway column, we learned that Chairman Terry has dumped the vehicle's DNC vanity license plate. He is reported telling a young Republican heckler that he changed the plate because his drivers were getting too many speeding tickets. Could McAuliffe have been embarrassed by identifying the Democratic Party with a Cadillac four-wheel gas guzzler? Being involved in so many shady deals never bothered Terry at all.
I've known Terry 14 years. He's a great guy. He's a co-parishioner at St. Luke and a man of the highest integrity, and he's going to win the elections this fall. You watch. One of those elections is the Florida governor's race, and it is hotter than a spring break wet t-shirt contest down there. A new poll for the Pensacola News-Journal shows Democrat Bill McBride has pulled to within 1 point of Governor Jeb Bush. Mr. Bush is stuck at 49%, while Mr. McBride has surged to 48%. Now, driving McBride's rise is his support for smaller class size and higher teacher pay. Governor Jeb Bush was quoted last week saying he has, quote, a devious plan, unquote, to stop the class size initiative. Bush didn't elaborate, but if he follows his big brother's example, look for Florida to invade the Bahamas just before the election.
You know, Paul, Mr. McBride is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the teachers union. If you think that's good government, be for Bill McBride. If you're against the teachers running this whole country, the teachers union running the country, vote for Bush. The House is expecting to vote on an Iraq resolution by the middle of the week. In the long-winded Senate debate on a use of force resolution, it's now expected to drag into next week. Aides to President Bush say tonight's speech is aimed more at the American people than at the Congress. First in the Crossfire tonight is Richard Pearl. He was an Assistant Secretary of Defense during the Reagan administration and is now a fellow with the American Enterprise Institute.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming, sir.
Hello, Robert.
We appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. It's an important topic. I want to begin, one of the ways that you've made waves has been to link, you did again yesterday on one of the Sunday shows, link Al-Qaeda, the perpetrators of September 11th, with Iraq. Now, this is a hotly disputed point. Let me read to you what the New York Times says our intelligence officials say, because they don't seem to agree with you, sir. They say this, I'll put it up on the screen for you. Senior intelligence and law enforcement officials say they have not received any corroborating evidence to support an initial report from Czech intelligence that Mohammed Atta, one of the September 11th hijackers, met an Iraqi intelligence officer in Prague in April of 2001. Why are you pushing this line if our intelligence officers say it's not so?
They're wrong.
Can you give us some reasons without breaching classified data? President Kennedy showed us the pictures of the missiles in Cuba. Have you got some proof?
Well, we don't have pictures. We have intelligence reports that I believe are reliable. I think there are other indications of other meetings with other members of Al-Qaeda, including hijackers, and intelligence officials from Iraq. The Iraqi is a fellow by the name of Alani. I think the evidence is compelling. If others think it isn't, there's just a difference of opinion between us.
But that difference of opinion, Mr. Pearl, is held by your colleagues in the Pentagon, in the intelligence agencies, and the intelligence committees. But let's listen to what the National Security Director, Dr. Condoleezza Rice, said just a few weeks ago when she was asked whether Saddam Hussein had a role in 9/11. Let's listen to her.
Do we know that he had a role in 9/11? No, we do not know that he had a role in 9/11. But I think that this is a test that sets a bar that is far too high.
Now, Richard, you're a chairman of the Defense Policy Board. You're a private citizen. You mean you have intelligence information that the National Security Director doesn't have?
No, listen carefully to what she said. She talked about a role in 9/11. What I said is that there is evidence that I find compelling that there were meetings between Czech intelligence, Mohammed Atta, and other hijackers. Now, whether that constitutes a role in 9/11, that's a matter of judgment, and I can't tell you it is because I don't know. But how would we know if he did? And in any case, Bob, it really doesn't matter very much. What we do know about Saddam is that he has offered sanctuary in Baghdad to any number of terrorists for a great many years.
Well, in fact, let me pick up on that point, because if it is, I'm an old political hack from the Clinton days, and my phrase in the campaign was, it's the economy, stupid. If, in fact, it's Al-Qaeda, stupid, which many of us believe, we strongly support the president pursuing them to the ends of the earth. One of the people who has that view is Senator Bob Graham. He's the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He, in fact, thinks that Iraq is the wrong target if we're going after Al-Qaeda, and this is what he had to say to the New York Times. Senator Graham said the anti-terrorism effort should focus on countries that had a significant Qaeda presence or terrorist training camps. Those are primarily in Syria, in the Syrian-controlled areas of Lebanon, end in Iran. I'll tell you, Mr. Pearl, if our presidents had proof of that and said we need to go to war with Iran, I'd be the first to sign up and agree.
I think
why are we going into Iraq?
I think you're confusing issues here. The question is not fundamentally Iraq's involvement in terrorism, and in particular Iraq's involvement with al-Qaeda. The reason for the concern with Iraq, with Saddam Hussein, has to do with his capacity to do harm to this country, because he possesses chemical and biological weapons. He is working as fast and as hard as he can to acquire nuclear weapons. And if we leave him in place, which is what the Clinton administration did, he will eventually acquire nuclear weapons and the ability to deliver chemical and biological weapons over much greater ranges. And what are we going to do then? We inherited, this administration inherited this problem, because for 8 years, the previous administration did nothing. They watched as the inspectors were expelled. They watched as al-Qaeda became what it became. It was nothing when Bill Clinton took office. I don't want to be partisan about this.
So I'm going to let you walk that back then. Do you really believe that President Clinton did nothing to contain, to try to fight al-Qaeda when, for example, General Donald Carrick, who I'm sure you know is a 3-star general retired, told the Washington Post that he served both presidents in national security, both President Clinton and President George W. Bush. He said President Clinton's team had a much stronger focus on terrorism than President Bush's did.
Well, they may have had a stronger focus, but when they left office, Osama bin Laden was running a massive terrorist training operation in Afghanistan unperturbed. And what we did in Afghanistan after September 11 could have been done before September 11, but it wasn't.
Mr. Pearl, on the question of attacking other countries besides Iraq, we had, on September 5th, we had Duncan Hunter, Republican congressman from California, vice chairman of the Armed Services Committee, future chairman if Republicans retain control, and he said something that was really startling. We're going to play a soundbite of what he said.
We're going to have times in the future when we see a small country or a group developing a nuclear device, because that technology's out there. We may see a Libya, for example, developing a nuclear device. And I think we're going to have the question over and over. But Iraq is the first take on that question.
So in other words, is this what we have to look forward to? Get Iraq out of the way, then we go to Libya, and so we are the avenging, we are the Romans of the 21st century. We're going all over the world. Conducting these military operations? Is that what Duncan Hunter is very closely tied into the Pentagon, as you know?
I think we have to make judgments in each individual case. And the balance here is, what are the risks involved in disarming people who are acquiring these weapons and we know have the worst in mind for us, against the costs and the risks of taking action before they can do it.
But do you agree with Duncan on that? That this is going to be a...
No, I don't agree with that at all. I can think of countries whose acquisition of nuclear weapons would not be a concern to us. The British have nuclear weapons. The French have nuclear weapons.
How about Libya?
Well, Libya would be a very serious concern. Wouldn't you be concerned if Gaddafi had nuclear weapons?
Well, I asked the questions and you answered.
We're going to have more questions for you, though, Mr. Pearl.
But I think that's an answer, Bob.
If you just give us just 1 minute, we're going to come right back in a minute. We're going to let some of our studio audience members also ask some of the hard questions about Iraq, like why now? And then later, has anyone on Capitol Hill noticed that there's more to talk about than Iraq? Like maybe, say, our tanking economy? Well, we'll ask a couple of members of Congress. And our quote of the day is a swing at our president from a Democrat whose name gets mentioned in a lot of conversations about 2004. Stay tuned.
Wow. I have to call Mother. You should see this place, Mom. So luxurious. Doug must have paid $500 a night.
My wife thinks I spent a fortune on this honeymoon, but I got the room for $99 on Hotels.com. Great deal. 2 clicks, and I had a room.
Save on thousands of hotels worldwide. Hotels.com. The best prices at the best places, guaranteed.
So that's accounting. And down here
It's the first day of our Dell internship. We're on the tour.
And this is the call center. This is where our customers call.
Lisa?
Yes.
I have an idea. Wouldn't it be great if when people call in, we help them get exactly the right PC?
Yeah, we'd ask them what they were going to use it for. Email, burning CDs.
So they wouldn't buy stuff they don't need.
We'd build their perfect PC at the perfect price. We could even do it on the website.
It would be totally better than going to the store.
Yeah, and the phone number could be 1-800. They already do that.
Get America's favorite PC, like a Dimension desktop for just $699, featuring an Intel Pentium 4 processor that delivers awesome performance for today's digital entertainment, recording music, sharing photos, gaming, and beyond. And for a limited time, you'll get free shipping. Get great deals on notebooks, too. Dude, you're getting a Dell.
Hey guys, maybe in here they can put in snacks.
When you want your perfect PC, it's easy as Dell. Dell PCs use Intel Pentium 4 processors.
Live CNN Tonight, President Bush speaks to the nation in a special edition of Connie Chung Tonight. Aaron Brown and John King join Connie for complete coverage, 8 Eastern.
Meet Joe. He bought a new Ford from a low-price, high-pressure dealership. What does he have now? A new Ford he wished he'd bought somewhere else. Meet Jim. He buys on value. What does Jim have? A new Ford he's really glad he bought from Canby Ford. He got a great deal. They treated him with respect. No pressure, no wasted time, and the service department is award-winning. When you're looking for a great car or truck, you'll find it in a Ford. When you're looking for the absolute best value in the Valley, you'll find it at Canby Ford.
Shelters for homeless teens, one of the many benefits of the charitable donations from the Spirit Mountain Community Fund.
This is CNN.
Back to Crossfire. New polls show that American voters want their elected officials to focus more on the economy and less on Iraq. But all we're hearing from the White House these days is Iraq around the clock. Well, in the Crossfire to continue the debate, Defense Policy Board Chairman Richard Pearl.
Mr. Pearl, on the speech that President Bush is giving tonight, and we've got a little preview of it, he is going to say that if we do not have disarmament in Iraq, we're going to need a regime change. Wait a minute, I thought regime change was the first thing. In fact, you've been coming on Crossfire for years saying we have to have regime change. Has President Bush changed his position, or has he got it wrong?
Well, I don't think he's changed his position. I can't figure out how you get disarmament in Iraq without regime change.
But you'd take it if you didn't get regime change?
Well, I don't think you can. So you're asking me to buy the impossible. As long as Saddam is there, as long as he is able to hide the weapons we're concerned about, and he can hide them far better than we can find them, we will be playing Easter egg hunt forever.
You won't entertain the possibility that we can't find any weapons because he doesn't have any?
No, I think we know that he has weapons, but we don't know where they are, or in many cases we don't know where they are. It's a very big country. It's a country the size of France. The number of inspectors that are being talked about is something like 220. I live in Chevy Chase, Maryland. You couldn't inspect Chevy Chase with 200 inspectors, much less a country the size of Iraq.
Well, Mr. Pearl, it seems like part of the theory on Iraq is a bank shot theory, that Saddam Hussein will develop these weapons or has them already and may give them to terrorists who then would use them against us. I'm curious, that seems to be part of the logic I get from the president, and it has some power to it. I'm curious, though, why, when terrorists murdered Americans directly, on July 31st, 5 Americans murdered in Hebrew University by Hamas, why we haven't retaliated against Hamas, but the president hasn't even called the families to express remorse, much less carry out the vengeance that even I, as a liberal, would love to see.
Well, I think that the Israelis are very actively engaged in retaliating against Hamas. I don't think it's reasonable.
Shouldn't we?
Well, I would be quite happy to see us work with the Israelis to bring Hamas under control. I think they're very dangerous. They recruit suicide bombers. Who knows where they end up practicing that skill. I guess they only do it once. So,
well, they knew they were going to kill Americans when they went to Hebrew University, didn't they?
Well, they knew they were going to kill whoever they could kill, and that's what's so vicious about this terrorism. Children, women, nationality doesn't matter.
Okay.
It didn't matter at the World Trade Center.
We have a question from the audience, please. Go ahead.
Hi, yes, I'm Dave Coder from Chicago, Illinois. And I was just wondering when the United States pulled out of the UN, disregarded all input from the rest of the world except Great Britain on matters of Armageddon.
Well, I don't know what you mean by pulled out of the UN. The president has gone to the UN. He has said, I think quite rightly to the UN, you have a responsibility. You have passed resolutions, many resolutions, and Saddam is violating those resolutions, and you're doing nothing about it. So he's challenged the UN to take action to bring about compliance with those resolutions, and they call for the complete disarmament of these weapons of mass destruction.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Gingrich from Rockville, Maryland, and my question is, if the U.S. attacks Iraq, a counterattack against Israel is inevitable, what preliminary military actions do you think the U.S. should take to maintain Israel and its safe state?
Well, of course, the Israelis have a significant capability to defend themselves, including now a ballistic missile defense called the Arrow. I hope one day we will have a ballistic missile defense. The same people who are reluctant to meet our responsibilities with respect to Iraq are not eager to fund missile defense.
It's one thing we can still agree on, Richard.
We still agree on that.
You know, you were asked much the same question on Meet the Press yesterday about defending on the ability of Iraq to hit Israel, and you made what I thought, you very seldom surprised me, you really surprised me on this. And let's play the answer to Tim Russert yesterday on Meet the Press.
Saddam has very few missiles to launch in the first place, and I would hope that the Iraqis, given an order to commit a crime, a war crime of that magnitude, would think twice before they carried it out, especially as they saw Saddam going down.
Well, you know, the Iraqi ambassador to the United Nations told me on CNN that they have very few of those missiles, so I'm glad you two are in agreement on that point. But I also wonder if these people are so reasonable and they're saying, gee, we don't want to do something that's going to kill us, why are we so worried about them using weapons of mass destruction against the United States if they're afraid even to attack Israel?
Well, I don't think they are so reasonable. And in order to send a missile with a chemical or a biological warhead would hardly be a reasonable
But you said you'd be afraid to do that.
Well, I think it is up to us to say to the people of Iraq, I don't think we can talk to Saddam Hussein, if you carry out Saddam's orders and send a chemical or a biological weapon against civilians, you are committing a crime of the highest order, and we will hold you responsible. There will be no Nuremberg defense.
Why don't we do that right now?
Well, I think we can do that now, and we should do that now.
We're nearly out of time. I want to ask another quick question about international law, and that is our friends in Great Britain. The Attorney General of Great Britain has told the Prime Minister that a war for regime change would violate international law. Blair, while our friend has said, I won't violate international law, will we have to fight alone even without our friends the Brits, since our president clearly wants regime change, and you told us at the beginning of this hour that that was our goal?
Our goal is to remove from Saddam's hands the weapons with which we might one day be attacked on a scale unimaginable before. If you can find a way to do that while leaving Saddam in place, tell me how you're going to go about it, because he gives every indication of having been prepared all these years to defy the United Nations and to pay a very heavy price, the sanctions, for example, in order to cling to these weapons. I don't know how to separate the two.
We'll have to let it go at that. Richard Krill, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And a little bit, we'll focus on the talk in Congress. Is all this debate in Congress really changing anybody's mind? But next, in our quote of the day, a presidential wannabe piles on the current president.
Crossfire is brought to you by Siemens, Global Network of Innovation.
Spin, spin, spin the globe. It's your turn to spin the globe.
All around the world, Siemens provides hospitals and doctors with the tools they need to make the right decisions right away. From diagnostics to patient information to care management, we're doing our part to help people everywhere feel better.
Spin, spin, spin the globe. It's your turn to spin the globe.
Consider this. New Shell gasoline is specially formulated to help prevent deposits in your engine. And a clean engine performs better. Is it any wonder, then, why so many drivers choose Shell?
The hero vanished. Gotham in chaos. Now, 3 carry on the fight. The strongest born of a legendary bloodline.
I found out more than just my father's identity. He didn't even know he had a kid.
3 united in one cause.
Might be good for me to go kick some ass. We don't kill innocent people. We don't kill anyone. Speak for yourself.
Birds of Prey. Series premiere this week on the WB Wednesday.
For affordable, full-color digital imaging systems that make everyday presentations really take off. Think inside the box. Think Savin.
CNN.com and Akamai, the leader in delivering video and audio online, have come together to provide the latest breaking news and information. For the very best in video, streamed live or on demand by Akamai, go to CNN.com.
America decides, and CNN is there with the latest news straight from the campaign trail. For complete coverage from the most experienced team of reporters and analysts anywhere, stay up to the minute. Stay with CNN as America decides.
Trial lawyer John Edwards certainly gets an A for ambition. The North Carolina Democrat stopped trying accident liability lawsuits and got himself elected to the U.S. Senate just 4 years ago, and already he's making moon eyes at the White House. One problem, his foreign policy credentials are pretty slim, non-existent. So today, Senator Edwards delivered a speech criticizing the Bush administration for showing, he said, disdain toward U.S. allies and treating them like an afterthought. As an afterthought, we'll give him our quote of the day.
Instead of demonstrating purpose without arrogance, as the President promised in his inaugural address, the administration's policy projects exactly the opposite: arrogance without purpose.
I'm really glad that John Edwards is keeping politics out of this.
Well, he's supporting the president on his resolution in front of the Senate, but even president supporters have to admit that he's done a poor job of organizing the world community, which is just stating the facts. Good for John Edwards. Well, just ahead, new developments on the sniper shootings in Washington, D.C. Connie Chung has the latest in a CNN News Alert. And as we continue counting down to President Bush's Iraq speech, members of the House and Senate preview Congress's great Iraq debate live right here on Crossfire.
Promise you'll call me?
I will, I promise.
Daddy!
A promise is a promise. Wherever you are, whatever you do, Allianz with its partners is the power beside you.
It's my mother's recipe. Oh, candles.
You'll find any excuse to go Outback for our perfectly grilled shrimp. Outback Steakhouse. No rules, just right.
You know the symptoms. No matter what you do, the heartburn keeps coming back.
The burn can stop you in your tracks.
You worry about the risk of long-term problems.
I got help. Learn to handle the disease and the risks in ways that make sense for me.
Call this number now for information and a free kit from Prevacid, a handbook on managing acid reflux disease and its risks, a risk alert profiler, a guide to making the most of your next doctor visit, and a 7-day free trial certificate to use if your doctor decides Prevacid is right for you. Prevacid fights acid reflux disease 3 ways. It beats the burn, helps heal the damage, and best of all, staying on Prevacid if prescribed can stop the damage from coming back. Prevacid has a low occurrence of side effects such as diarrhea, abdominal pain, and nausea. So if you want the power to manage the risks, heal the damage, and stay healed, call now for your free kit.
Hello, I'm Connie Chung at the CNN Broadcast Center in New York. Crossfire is back in 90 seconds, but first, these stories top our news alert. A serial sniper terrorizing the Washington, D.C. area has struck again, and this time the victim is a 13-year-old boy. The teen was shot in the chest outside his middle school in Maryland this morning. He's listed in critical but stable condition. This marks the 8th sniper shooting since Wednesday night. 6 were fatal. An argument at this New York hotel ended with a female Navy seaman plunging to her death over the weekend. Now her shipmate is being held on $250,000 bail on a second-degree manslaughter charge. Navy Petty Officer Brian Cooley told prosecutors that he punched and shoved Lisa Tedstone and made no effort to stop her fall from a sixth-floor window. President Bush has now stepped into the end of the 10-day West Coast shipping lockout that's costing the economy about $2 billion a day. Today, Mr. Bush created a board of inquiry to look into the dispute between shippers and dock workers. It could be the first step to ordering the two sides back to work under an 80-day cooling-off period. Space Shuttle Atlantis lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center today, and the public got a chance to go along for the ride. A video camera mounted near the top of the external fuel tank offered a first-of-its-kind view of the launch, showing the Florida coastline fading quickly into the distance. And those are the top stories at this hour. I'll be back in 30 minutes, and now back to Paul and Bob in Washington. Gentlemen?
Connie, what do you have for us tonight?
Well, the president's expected to make his address on Iraq to the American people in just a short while, and we'll be watching that, Bob. Afterwards, also, we'll go live to Baghdad for reaction from there, and we'll talk to a congressman who just returned from Iraq to hear what he has to say about whether the United States should go to war. Back to you.
Connie, that sounds like a terrific show. We'll be watching the president, and then we'll be watching your interviews afterwards. Thank you very much. Connie Chung, ladies and gentlemen. Well, some of our viewers have emailed us to tell us what they're hoping to hear from President Bush tonight. That's coming up in our Fireback segment. But first, we're going to ask a member of the House and a member of the Senate what's going on behind the scenes of those two bodies as lawmakers hold their historic debate on war and peace. Stay tuned.
Join Carville, Begala, Carlson, and Novak in the Crossfire. For free tickets to the live Washington audience, call 202-994-8CNN or email us at cnn@gwu.edu. Now you can step into the Crossfire.
We went to great lengths to make our Goose Down jacket even better. We considered all kinds of things. Had some big ideas. When a few more inches was all it needed. Introducing the remarkable, reversible Goose Down Parka. Just $88 with extra warmth where you need it most. Only from Land's End.
In Code Blue, life can change in a heartbeat. All your hospital's resources matter in that heartbeat. Hospitals face a critical shortage of workers. We care for America's uninsured and may spend billions on disaster readiness. 1/3 of hospitals are already losing money, and on October 1st, there will be billions in new cuts. Tell your senators to help our hospitals now, because in a heartbeat, that could make all the difference.
Once a year, the world's most influential business and political leaders gather at a unique event where they can speak candidly and meet eye to eye. The occasion, the Fortune Global Forum, the most exclusive gathering of its kind, where CEOs of the world's leading multinationals join political leaders from the world's most dynamic economies to explore common concerns and exchange new ideas. This year's forum in Washington, D.C. will explore the new realities with a focus on the most pressing business issues of our time. Security, restoring investor trust, bridging cultural differences in a difficult world. From all over the globe, world leaders brought together by invitation only to create a path into the future. The 2002 Fortune Global Forum, presented by Fortune magazine.
CNN Tomorrow. Another shooting in Maryland will take you inside the hunt for the sniper. Plus, the nation reacts to President Bush's speech on Iraq on the next American Morning with Paul Azan. CNN Tomorrow, 7 a.m. Eastern.
Welcome back to Crossfire. We're at the George Washington University here in downtown Washington, D.C., and we are counting down the last few minutes, about 26 by my watch, until our president speaks to us about Iraq. He's in Cincinnati to talk to an invitation-only crowd, which to a skeptic like me suggests maybe the speech is more about cheerleading than leadership. Our president, of course, won't be hearing any dissent or debate at his speech, but here on Crossfire, we encourage everyone to be heard. Joining us now, California Democratic Congressman Bob Filner and Republican Senator Kit Bond of Missouri. Thanks a lot. Senator, good to see you.
How you doing?
Good, sir. Hi, Bob.
How are you, sir? Congressman Filner, three of your fellow peace Democrats turned up in Baghdad, and Congressman McDermott actually called the President of the United States a liar, broadcasting from Baghdad. Tom Daschle, the Democratic leader of the Senate, one of the leading Democrats in the country, was asked about this on Meet the Press yesterday, and I'd like you to listen to what he answered.
I don't think it is, frankly. I think that crossed the line. I think we've got to be very careful about our rhetoric. I wouldn't have said that. Most Democrats, I think, would disagree.
He was asked if it was appropriate. He said, I don't think it is, frankly. He said most Democrats wouldn't disagree with him. Do you disagree with him?
Well, I don't speak for those congressmen, and they don't speak for me. But I think what they are trying to say, and I agree with them, is that we are hell-bent on having it seems, a unilateral preemptive strike, and that we ought to be working with the United Nations to avoid the risk of American lives and American property, and try to disarm Hussein without going on a preemptive unilateral strike.
So as a senior Democratic member of the House of Representatives, I think you're the second-ranking Democrat on your committee, you defend and support a fellow Democrat calling the President of the United States a liar when he's in Baghdad.
I don't think that's what he said, but look.
He said he was potentially misleading the American people.
He doesn't speak for the Democratic Party, and I think many of us in the Democratic Party are saying this has to be done in a different way. We have a threat coming from Saddam, but we need to handle it in a different way. Otherwise, we put at risk many American men and women.
Senator Bond, first, thank you for joining us. That was good to see you.
My pleasure.
Second, the speech tonight, let me ask you about it. In light of the front page of the New York Times today, which tells us in a survey, they asked the American people a bunch of questions about the president and his conduct of the economy and the war. They asked this question: is the Bush administration using Iraq for political advantage? This is what the American people said. 51% said yes, 40 said no. The majority of Americans think that the Bush administration is trying to get political points out of this. Given that, isn't it a mistake for him to be speaking in Cincinnati in front of an invitation-only crowd at a pep rally rather than in a serious, sober setting like the Oval Office?
A number of fallacies in your statement. The fact that the New York Times sets up a push poll to get the question to say they think it's political, that doesn't tell me anything. I don't happen to read the New York Times. I talk to the people in Missouri. They think it's very serious. They don't think it's political. Certainly leading Democrats like Joe Lieberman and Evan Bayh and Richard Gephardt have agreed with this. This is an effort. The resolution that we're going to be working on this week is supported on both sides of the aisle, and as the president said, Republicans and Democrats are working together. Now, the president has spoken very forcefully in all kinds of forums. The United Nations speech, I think, was an excellent speech. He really laid it out. He challenged the United Nations. He's worked with members of Congress. Some of my colleagues on the Democratic side said he wasn't talking enough about it. He needed to fill us in. Well, we're getting him, we're getting all of the information from him. I'm delighted that he continues to speak on it, as do members of his administration, because this is a very serious question, and I think everybody's going to have an opportunity to have their say.
But Senator, you know what's happening in the House, though? The members of the leadership want to make the Iraq vote the last vote of our session and go out of town. So we can't talk about what's going on with the economy, that we can't talk about what's going on with our 401ks, that we can't talk about the stock market. They want us to, the president may not be politicizing it, but his party sure is, and they don't want us to talk about anything else.
That's just nuts. I can't speak.
Well, come over to the House and find out.
Listen, that's your problem over in the House.
Well,
I can tell you, we've got a problem. Can I finish?
Sure.
Thank you. We've got a problem in the Senate because our Senate leader has not been able to bring up a budget resolution. That's why the appropriations process is loused up. The Senate Majority Leader won't let Chairman Max Baucus report out a prescription drug bill out of the Finance Committee. He won't let Senator Bingaman report out an energy bill. We haven't been able to deal with any of the major problems facing this country because the Senate right now is dysfunctional. But we didn't come to debate the congressional priorities. We're here to talk about law.
Bob Filner, one thing I always thought about you is that you didn't duck question, and you really ducked question about the Baghdad boys, the current version of Hanoi Jane. But you know, it was something that really probably drove Congressman Gephardt, your leader, into such a strong support for the president to disassociate himself with these people in Baghdad. Let's listen to what the House Democratic leader said.
You cannot play politics with this. This is about people's life and death. It is about peace or war. And I believe to pull politics into it, and I've told my members this from the beginning, is immoral.
You have any problem with that?
No, I think what the leader is saying, and I think we all agree, that this is a matter of conscience and what is best for America and what is best for what we think for our districts. Many of us in the Democratic Party and some in the Republican Party think that we ought not to be doing this unilaterally. We ought to be working with the United Nations. We ought to be working through the United Nations and disarm Saddam in that way.
So you don't have any problem with Dick Gephardt taking the position he's taken?
Well, he could take the position he's taking, but he certainly hasn't taken it with a vote or anything from the Democratic caucus.
Should he stay on as leader?
I think that's going to be determined after the election.
Opinion?
That's going to be determined after the election.
Let me ask you about a leader in the Senate from my party. Robert Byrd of West Virginia has been there longer than any Democrat and speaks with great authority and is one of the great historians of the Senate. Here's what he said on the Senate floor about our president and the way we're approaching this war. Let me let you take a look, Senator.
Those two little words. Why now? What has changed in the last year, in the last 6 months, or in the last 6 weeks that would compel us to attack now? Shouldn't the president be spending more time with his military advisors in Washington instead of making campaign speeches?
First, he's wearing your tie, so he's got good taste.
Yeah, good taste.
But why now?
I serve on the Appropriations Committee, but I didn't check with him on the dress code for the day.
If it is so urgent, as the president says, why now? Why isn't he meeting with his military advisors instead of raising political money?
He has been. He's been meeting with his military advisors. He's been meeting with us. He's been meeting with world leaders. He's been speaking to the United Nations. And frankly, I think my Democratic colleague from Connecticut, Joe Lieberman, said it best. When they asked him why now, he said we should have done it 5 years ago. We had strong words and strong resolutions, and the Iraq Liberation Act, which a friend the congressman here voted for, said we need to get rid of Saddam Hussein. Well, September 11th of 2001 made it absolutely critical that we not sit back and take another step.
We must take a little break right now, and coming up, your chance to fire back some questions about the president's Iraq policy. But next, we'll ask our guests here what lawmakers are saying when they aren't in front of the TV cameras.
Good night.
Truly flat beds in business class. British Airways.
I needed more computers in the practice. Considering the experience and frustration I had had with the PC, I was afraid it was going to be disastrous, and I was going to spend all my time trying to make these computers work. You know, it's grown from a 1 PC, 2 people practice to a 12 Mac, 60 people practice. Not worrying about fixing computers or learning how to use them. I'd like to be spending time making pets happy and healthy. My name is Mark Gibson, and I'm a vet.
Too many high-interest monthly payments? Why not pay them off with a second mortgage with a no-closing cost option from Ditech.com? Apply online now or call us at 1-800-71-FIX. And there is no equity required. Ditech Second Mortgage with a no-closing cost option can help you to consolidate your high-interest debts into one low monthly payment. Ditech.com, your 24/7 mortgage solution. Apply online or call us at 1-800-71-FIX.
on Newsnight, we take a look at the president's primetime speech on Iraq, how he laid out the case for the American people, how that case is being received in Congress, in Iraq, and around the world. That and more on Newsnight, CNN Tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern.
In just a few minutes, President Bush is going to tell the country that Iraq poses a unique menace to the U.S. because it gathers the most serious dangers of our age in one place. In the Crossfire, as we wait for the president to begin speaking, are Democratic Congressman Bob Fellner of California and Republican Senator Kit Bond of Missouri.
Gentlemen, if it's okay with you, let's get some American citizens to ask you some questions directly. What's your question, sir?
I'm Chung from Detroit, Michigan. My question is for both legislators. What will be the political fallout for Democrats who vote against war with Iraq?
Well, I think people in our districts want us to vote our conscience, to vote what we think is best for our nation. I have had mail on this subject running about 10-1 against a unilateral attack on Iraq. But I think people want leaders who will say what they think and say it straight out. And I have been saying that this is not the time, this is not the place to go unilaterally. We must work with the United Nations. We must disarm Saddam through an international coalition.
And Senator, your party is running ads in South Dakota against Senator Tim Johnson, even though he's supporting President Bush on this war. They're attacking him anyway, aren't they?
I don't know who they're running ads against. They're certainly not attacking him on the war issue. We do have legitimate differences, and we're going to continue to have differences. But I'd have to agree with the congressman that this is a vote that shouldn't be about politics. I'll have to tell you, in Missouri, we have some very vocal people who are strongly opposed to any kind of action. But to clear up the record, it's not unilateral. We are working together. We are working with the United Nations. In the United Nations, the president has said and will continue to say that he is going to work in the United Nations. We do have some who are with us. We have some in the United Nations who haven't signed on. I think if we give a strong signal that Democrats and Republicans in the United States Congress believe that we are not starting a war, we are continuing a war which is going on right now 67 times since September 16th. Saddam Hussein has fired on the coalition aircraft patrolling the no-fly zone.
Let's get another question, please.
Yes, hello. Hi, I'm Lisa Coliani. I'm from McLean, Virginia. And my question is for Senator Bond, and I want to know why now. I need to explain to my 17-year-old son who's here tonight, as well as my 15-and-a-half, and I have a son and a 13-year-old daughter, why is this not a partisan issue? How can I explain that to them?
I think if you look at the unfortunate track record of what has happened in the Middle East and what happened in the United States on September 11th, you know that the United States is no longer safe from the attacks by a terrorist operation or an enemy, a sworn enemy of the United States like Saddam Hussein. We have seen since 1998, when he threw out the inspectors, there have been increasing intelligence reports about his acquisition of weapons of mass destruction. I don't think anybody will ever forget the sight when we lost roughly 3,000 people. A weapon of September 11th, chemical, biological, or heaven forbid, a nuclear weapon, could kill 10, 100, or 1,000 times more American citizens. We cannot sit back and wait when all the information we have is he is preparing those weapons for use against us.
I want to put up on the screen a New York Times CBS News poll about the U.S. taking military action to remove Saddam Hussein. Approve 67%, disapprove 27%. When you look at that in the Democratic cloakroom, Mr. Fellner, on the Hill, don't you say, man, I am playing with a losing hand in this game?
Well, look,
politically?
as I said, we're going to vote our conscience on it. I feel very strongly about this. I disagree with the senator when he says we're working with the United Nations. The resolution that he's going to vote for says it doesn't matter what the UN says. We're going to take action. And I agree with the senator that September 11th changed things. It's, as they say, lowered the bar, but it hasn't lowered the bar to zero. We cannot use September 11th as an excuse for every action that the United States wants to take in this world. That just is, it will open up an international Pandora's box that we will not be able to control or deal with. How can we stop China from going after Taiwan or any other country from going after any other one? The September 11th is an important fact, Senator, and I don't want any of my constituents in San Diego the victims of a terrorist attack. But we must work on this in a whole different way, or we're making America less safe in the way the president is going.
Senator, there was a report. I mean,
let me just say that this, I don't know which resolution he's talking about, but the resolution that I have before us is that Congress supports the efforts of the president to strictly enforce through the United Nations Security Council the resolutions to obtain prompt and
Senator,
decisive action by the Security Council.
But should we go alone if there's a report out of Britain today that the Britons may not be able to join us because it violates international law and they're bound to it? Should we go it alone even if our one ally, the Brits, won't come with us?
First, we are working to build a coalition, and I believe that our clear indication of the seriousness of this effort and building upon what Tony Blair has said indicates that we will have a significant coalition behind us. Right now, the president, even though he may be tonight, if you say nobody else is with us, he may be a majority of one. But leadership requires identifying dangers, laying out a plan to deal with those dangers, and bringing people along who may not want to stand up until they see some strong leadership. The president is providing strong leadership. We're going to give him strong bipartisan support in this bipartisan resolution, which speaks about the United Nations.
It's a violation of international law to enforce the UN resolution on our own.
I want to thank Senator Kit Bond, a Republican, and Missouri Congressman Bob Filner, a Democrat from California. Both strong leadership in both of their two parties. Well, the president's speech begins in just a few minutes, so stay with us. A couple of viewers have fired back some questions they might want our president to answer. Stay tuned.
If you'd like to fire back at Crossfire, email us at crossfire@cnn.com. Make sure to include your name and hometown.
What a great room.
So comfortable.
How about that breakfast buffet? All you can eat. I can't believe a room only cost us $99 a night.
$99? For both of you?
How did you get such a great deal? Hotels.com. Hotels.com.
Save on thousands of hotels worldwide. Hotels.com. The best prices at the best places, guaranteed.
Live CNN Tonight, President Bush speaks to the nation in a special edition of Connie Chung Tonight. Aaron Brown and John King join Connie for complete coverage, 8 Eastern.
Most people don't understand just how big my dad's heart really is. I laugh sometimes because when you get to know him, you realize what a great guy. For me, he's been a real strength and a real light in my life. And now he's taking time to run for the state senate. From what I can see, the legislature needs more people who have his kind of business experience to help create jobs and make better decisions. I'll miss him when he gets elected, but he's worth sharing. My name is Jenny Tiernan. My dad's name is Bob Tiernan.
Mattress World challenges the mattress industry.
We guarantee our sleep experts will offer you the lowest prices on the best brands.
We're so confident you can shop our competitor sale ads right here in our store.
Your best price, quality, service, and selection is right here at Mattress World. Mattress World's hard-to-find locations will save you money.
It's not too late to sleep like a baby. Mattress World.
We can't beat any price on any comparable mattress, and the mattress is free.
Experience a world of smoothness in a little chocolate mint. Rich chocolate Bella Mints, the smooth mint.
We asked our team of comedy writers to come up with something clever and hilarious. They had several ideas, not one of which was the least bit clever or hilarious. So we've decided to leave the comedy to the professionals, like Drew Carey, Home Improvement, Seinfeld, and Friends, and focus on other things, like hiring new writers. The non-stop comedy block on TBS Superstation.
Is your kid trying to tell you something? He could have a problem learning. Don't wait. The sooner you get help, the better the chance your kid has.
This is CNN.
Closed captioning provided by Oric 8-pound upright vacuum.
Looking for a lightweight vacuum that's really powerful? Try my Auric XL free for 30 days. Nothing gets by an Auric.
We're waiting for President Bush to address the nation, but in the meantime, fire back. Our first fire back from Stan of Houston, Texas. He writes, I have been unemployed for several months now and have lost hope in finding a job anytime soon. I've also lost hope in our president. With all the attention on going to war with Iraq, what about me and my family? Stan, go out and get a job. That's my advice to you.
Stan, go out and get a new president, one who cares about you and your job instead of people in some other country. Garrett Hall in Hillsboro, Oregon writes, maybe we should trust that the president knows more about what's happening in Iraq than we do. Otherwise, there could be more devastation and more deaths than the September 11th attacks, and we will be left to ask the questions, how much did the government know about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and why didn't it do anything to prevent this? Mr. Hall, thank you for your email.
All right, we'll take some questions from the audience.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Go
What's
ahead.
your name and hometown?
Hi, I'm Tyson from Virginia, and I was curious.
You have a corner there?
Yes, it's around there somewhere. I don't really know. It's up in there. But anyway, why were the Democrats ready to go to war with Iraq when Clinton was in office, but are now hesitant to support Bush?
It's all politics, Tyson. Can't you understand that? Whatever President Clinton said was fine, particularly if it got the country's attention off of Monica.
Well, there's a fundamental difference. First off, Bill Clinton during the Lewinsky thing was more popular than Bush is today, so maybe Bush needs to go get him a girlfriend. Maybe we'd like him better. Second, things changed on the ground. When Saddam Hussein expelled those weapons inspectors in 1998, we attacked Iraq, and we were right to do it. Somebody's got to tell me what in the world has changed on the ground in Iraq today that justifies an invasion tomorrow.
You know, I hate to ever be accurate about anything, but they walked out. They weren't expelled. Look it up. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Dan. I'm from Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I was just wondering if you felt that the debate on Iraq has created a distraction for the American people in Congress.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. Look, we've spent an hour on Iraq tonight. We haven't even talked about how Bush has cratered the economy.
Okay, go ahead. Crater, that's the Democratic line. Go ahead, Paul.
From the left, I'm Paul Vigala. Good night for Crossfire.
For the right, I'm Robert Novak. Join us again next time for another edition of Crossfire, a special...
This is a CNN special report.
Good evening. In just a few minutes, just after 8:01 p.m. Eastern Time, President Bush is scheduled to address the nation and to address questions about the urgency he's placed on confronting Iraq and its dictator Saddam Hussein. Coming on the first anniversary of the start of the U.S. liberation of Afghanistan, tonight's speech is targeted at the UN and members of Congress, all of whom are debating President Bush's claims about Iraq and what must be done about Iraq. After the speech, which the president is delivering in Cincinnati, Ohio, we'll talk to members of Congress and gauge international reaction. As for the American public, a new CNN USA Today Gallup poll has mixed news for the president. 74% of those polled said they will support a U.S. invasion if Mr. Bush decides to invade. However, when asked who should actually have the authority to make that decision, more of those polled, 54%, said Congress than President Bush. We have CNN senior political analyst Bill Schneider with us from Washington. Bill, was there any bad news for the president in the polls today?
Well, the bad news is that while most Americans say they would support the president once he decided to go into Iraq, the question was asked, do you support him right now? Now, for the last month, the president has been staging a full court press to convince the public that we're right to go into Iraq. In early September, as you can see on the screen, 57% favored going into Iraq. Now the number is 53%. It's still a majority, but look what's happened. In the past month, the White House has been losing ground, not gaining ground. That's why the president is making this speech tonight.
All right, Bill Schneider, thank you. Now, the president is about to begin, so we're going to go now to my CNN colleague, Aaron Brown, who will then introduce the president's speech.
Good evening, I'm Aaron Brown. In just about a minute, the president will walk into the Cincinnati Museum Center at Union Terminal, one of those beautiful old renovated rail stations, to lay out in the most detail so far his case for disarming Iraq, which of course could mean the possibility of war. Our senior White House correspondent John King is at the White House tonight. John, in 20 seconds or so, a preview.
Ago in October, President Kennedy, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, said the United States and the world could not ignore a threat. The threat at that time, of course, in Cuba, Russian missiles, Soviet missiles on the American doorstep. President Bush tonight will say Saddam Hussein poses a similar threat to U.S. interests and to the world's interest. Mr. Bush will say there are many dangerous regimes around the world, but that Iraq, because of its weapons programs and because of a, quote, murderous tyrant, stands unique.
John, thank you, and we'll check with you right after the president's speech. The president, over the last week or so, has gone to great pains to say that war is not the first option. We would expect him to make a similar argument today. While laying out the case for Iraq and disarming Iraq, the president entering now the Cincinnati Museum Center, 500 or so invited guests there for a speech that's expected to run about a half an hour. The President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thanks for coming. Thank you all. Thank you for that very gracious and warm Cincinnati welcome. I'm honored to be here tonight. Appreciate you all coming. Tonight I want to take a few minutes to discuss a grave threat to peace and America's determination to lead the world in confronting that threat. The threat comes from Iraq. It arises directly from the Iraqi regime's own actions, its history of aggression, and its drive toward an arsenal of terror. 11 years ago, as a condition for ending the Persian Gulf War, the Iraqi regime was required to destroy its weapons of mass destruction, to cease all development of such weapons, and to stop all support for terrorist groups. The Iraqi regime has violated all of those obligations. It possesses and produces chemical and biological weapons. It is seeking nuclear weapons. It has given shelter and support to terrorism and practices terror against its own people. The entire world has witnessed Iraq's 11-year history of defiance, deception, and bad faith. We must also never forget the most vivid events of recent history. On September the 11th, 2001, America felt its vulnerability, even to threats that gather on the other side of the earth. We resolved then, and we are resolved today, to confront every threat from any source that could bring sudden terror and suffering to America. Members of Congress of both political parties and members of the United Nations Security Council agree that Saddam Hussein is a threat to peace and must disarm. We agree that the Iraqi dictator must not be permitted to threaten America and the world with horrible poisons and diseases and gases and atomic weapons. Since we all agree on this goal, the issue is, how best can we achieve it? Many Americans have raised legitimate questions about the nature of the threat, about the urgency of action. Why be concerned now? About the link between Iraq developing weapons of terror and the wider war on terror. These are all issues we've discussed broadly and fully within my administration. And tonight, I want to share those discussions with you. First, some ask why Iraq is different from other countries or regimes that also have terrible weapons. While there are many dangers in the world, the threat from Iraq stands alone because it gathers the most serious dangers of our age in one place. Iraq's weapons of mass destruction are controlled by a murderous tyrant who has already used chemical weapons to kill thousands of people. This same tyrant has tried to dominate the Middle East, has invaded and brutally occupied a small neighbor, has struck other nations without warning, and holds an unrelenting hostility toward the United States. By its past and present actions, by its technological capabilities, by the merciless nature of its regime, Iraq is unique. As a former chief weapons inspector of the UN has said, the fundamental problem with Iraq remains the nature of the regime itself. Saddam Hussein is a homicidal dictator who is addicted to weapons of mass destruction. Some ask how urgent this danger is to America and the world. The danger is already significant, and it only grows worse with time. If we know Saddam Hussein has dangerous weapons today, and we do, does it make any sense for the world to wait to confront him as he grows even stronger and develops even more dangerous weapons? In 1995, after several years of deceit by the Iraqi regime, the head of Iraq's military industries defected. It was then that the regime was forced to admit that it had produced more than 30,000 liters of anthrax and other deadly biological agents. The inspectors, however, concluded that Iraq had likely produced 2 to 4 times that amount. This is a massive stockpile of biological weapons that has never been accounted for and is capable of killing millions. We know that the regime has produced thousands of tons of chemical agents, including mustard gas, sarin nerve gas, VX nerve gas. Saddam Hussein also has experience in using chemical weapons. He's ordered chemical attacks on Iran and on more than 40 villages in his own country. These actions killed or injured at least 20,000 people, more than 6 times the number of people who died in the attacks of September the 11th. And surveillance photos reveal that the regime is rebuilding facilities that it had used to produce chemical and biological weapons. Every chemical and biological weapon that Iraq has or makes is a direct violation of the truce that ended the Persian Gulf War in 1991. Yet Saddam Hussein has chosen to build and keep these weapons despite international sanctions, UN demands, and isolation from the civilized world. Iraq possesses ballistic missiles with a likely range of hundreds of miles, far enough to strike Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, and other nations in a region where more than 135,000 American civilians and service members live and work. We've also discovered through intelligence that Iraq has a growing fleet of manned and unmanned aerial vehicles that could be used to disperse chemical or biological weapons across broad areas. We're concerned that Iraq is exploring ways of using these UAVs for missions targeting the United States. And of course, sophisticated delivery systems aren't required for a chemical or biological attack. All that might be required are a small container and one terrorist or Iraqi intelligence operative to deliver it. And that is the source of our urgent concern about Saddam Hussein's links to international terrorist groups. Over the years, Iraq has provided safe haven to terrorists such as Abu Nidal, whose terror organization carried out more than 90 terrorist attacks in 20 countries that killed or injured nearly 900 people, including 12 Americans. Iraq has also provided safe haven to Abu Abbas, who was responsible for seizing the Achille Lauro and killing an American passenger. And we know that Iraq is continuing to finance terror and gives assistance to groups that use terrorism to undermine Middle East peace. We know that Iraq and the al-Qaeda terrorist network share a common enemy, the United States of America. We know that Iraq and al-Qaeda have had high-level contacts that go back a decade. Some al-Qaeda leaders who fled Afghanistan went to Iraq. These include one very senior al-Qaeda leader who received medical treatment in Baghdad this year and who has been associated with planning for chemical and biological attacks. We've learned that Iraq has trained al-Qaeda members in bomb making, in poisons, and deadly gases. And we know that after September the 11th, Saddam Hussein's regime gleefully celebrated the terrorist attacks on America. Iraq could decide on any given day to provide a biological or chemical weapon to a terrorist group or individual terrorists. Alliance with terrorists could allow the Iraqi regime to attack America without leaving any fingerprints. Some have argued that confronting the threat from Iraq could detract from the war against terror. To the contrary, confronting the threat posed by Iraq is crucial to winning the war on terror. When I spoke to Congress more than a year ago, I said that those who harbor terrorists are as guilty as the terrorists themselves. Saddam Hussein is harboring terrorists and the instruments of terror, the instruments of mass death and destruction, and he cannot be trusted. The risk is simply too great that he will use them or provide them to a terror network. Terror cells and outlaw regimes building weapons of mass destruction are different faces of the same evil. Our security requires that we confront both, and the United States military is capable of confronting both. Many people have asked how close Saddam Hussein is to developing a nuclear weapon. Well, we don't know exactly, and that's the problem. Before the Gulf War, the best intelligence indicated that Iraq was 8 to 10 years away from developing a nuclear weapon. After the war, international inspectors learned that the regime had been much closer. The regime in Iraq would likely have possessed a nuclear weapon no later than 1993. The inspectors discovered that Iraq had an advanced nuclear weapons development program, had a design for a workable nuclear weapon, and was pursuing several different methods of enriching uranium for a bomb. Before being barred from Iraq in 1998, the International Atomic Energy Agency dismantled extensive nuclear weapons-related facilities, including 3 uranium enrichment sites. That same year, information from a high-ranking Iraqi nuclear engineer who had defected revealed that despite his public promises, Saddam Hussein had ordered his nuclear program to continue. The evidence indicates that Iraq is reconstituting its nuclear weapons program. Saddam Hussein has held numerous meetings with Iraqi nuclear scientists, a group he calls his nuclear mujahideen, his nuclear holy warriors. Satellite photographs reveal that Iraq is rebuilding facilities at sites that have been part of its nuclear program in the past. Iraq has attempted to purchase high-strength aluminum tubes and other equipment needed for gas centrifuges, which are used to enrich uranium for nuclear weapons. If the Iraqi regime is able to produce, buy, or steal an amount of highly enriched uranium a little larger than a single softball, it could have a nuclear weapon in less than a year. And if we allow that to happen, a terrible line would be crossed. Saddam Hussein would be in a position to blackmail anyone who opposes his aggression. He would be in a position to dominate the Middle East. He would be in a position to threaten America. And Saddam Hussein would be in a position to pass nuclear technology to terrorists. Some citizens wonder, after 11 years of living with this problem, why do we need to confront it now? And there's a reason. We've experienced the horror of September the 11th. We have seen that those who hate America are willing to crash airplanes into buildings full of innocent people. Our enemies would be no less willing. In fact, they would be eager to use biological or chemical or a nuclear weapon. Knowing these realities, America must not ignore the threat gathering against us. Facing clear evidence of peril, we cannot wait for the final proof, the smoking gun that could come in the form of a mushroom cloud. As President Kennedy said in October of 1962, neither the United States of America nor the world community of nations can tolerate deliberate deception and offensive threats on the part of any nation, large or small. We no longer live in a world, he said, where only the actual firing of weapons represents a sufficient challenge to a nation's security to constitute maximum peril. Understanding the threats of our time, knowing the designs and deceptions of the Iraqi regime, we have every reason to assume the worst, and we have an urgent duty to prevent the worst from occurring. Some believe we can address this danger by simply resuming the old approach to inspections and applying diplomatic and economic pressure. Yet this is precisely what the world has tried to do since 1991. The UN inspections program was met with systematic deception. The Iraqi regime bugged hotel rooms and offices of inspectors to find where they were going next. They forged documents, destroyed evidence, and developed mobile weapons facilities to keep a step ahead of inspectors. 8 so-called presidential palaces were declared off limits to unfettered inspections. These sites actually encompass 12 square miles with hundreds of structures, both above and below the ground, where sensitive materials could be hidden. The world has also tried economic sanctions and watched Iraq use billions of dollars in illegal oil revenues to fund more weapons purchases, rather than providing for the needs of the Iraqi people. The world has tried limited military strikes to destroy Iraq's weapons of mass destruction capabilities, only to see them openly rebuilt, while the regime again denies they even exist. The world has tried no-fly zones to keep Saddam from terrorizing his own people. And in the last year alone, the Iraqi military has fired upon American and British pilots more than 750 times. After 11 years during which we've tried containment, sanctions, inspections, even selected military action, the end result is that Saddam Hussein still has chemical and biological weapons and is increasing his capabilities to make more. And he is moving ever closer to developing a nuclear weapon. Clearly, to actually work any new inspections, sanctions, or enforcement mechanisms will have to be very different. America wants the UN to be an effective organization that helps keep the peace. And that is why we are urging the Security Council to adopt a new resolution setting out tough, immediate requirements. Among those requirements, the Iraqi regime must reveal and destroy, under UN supervision, all existing weapons of mass destruction. To ensure that we learn the truth, the regime must allow witnesses to its illegal activities to be interviewed outside the country. And these witnesses must be free to bring their families with them, so they are all beyond the reach of Saddam Hussein's terror and murder. And inspectors must have access to any site at any time without preclearance, without delay, without exceptions. The time for denying, deceiving, and delaying has come to an end. Saddam Hussein must disarm himself, or for the sake of peace, we will lead a coalition to disarm him. Many nations are joining us in insisting that Saddam Hussein's regime be held accountable. They are committed to defending the international security that protects the lives of both our citizens and theirs. And that's why America is challenging all nations to take the resolutions of the UN Security Council seriously. And these resolutions are very clear. In addition to declaring and destroying all of its weapons of mass destruction, Iraq must end its support for terrorism. It must cease the persecution of its civilian population. It must stop all illicit trade outside the oil for food program. It must release or account for all Gulf War personnel, including an American pilot whose fate is still unknown. By taking these steps, and by only taking these steps, the Iraqi regime has an opportunity to avoid conflict. These steps would also change the nature of the Iraqi regime itself. America hopes the regime will make that choice. Unfortunately, at least so far, we have little reason to expect it. And that's why two administrations, mine and President Clinton's, have stated that regime change in Iraq is the only certain means of removing a great danger to our nation. I hope this will not require military action, but it may. And military conflict could be difficult. An Iraqi regime faced with its own demise may attempt cruel and desperate measures. If Saddam Hussein orders such measures, his generals would be well advised to refuse those orders. If they do not refuse, they must understand that all war criminals will be pursued and punished. If we have to act, we will take every precaution that is possible. We will plan carefully. We will act with the full power of the United States military. We will act with allies at our side, and we will prevail. There is no easy or risk-free course of action. Some have argued we should wait, and that's an option. In my view, it's the riskiest of all options, because the longer we wait, the stronger and bolder Saddam Hussein will become. We could wait and hope that Saddam does not give weapons to terrorists or develop a nuclear weapon to blackmail the world. But I'm convinced that is a hope against all evidence. As Americans, we want peace. We work and sacrifice for peace. But there can be no peace if our security depends on the will and whims of a ruthless and aggressive dictator. I'm not willing to stake one American life on trusting Saddam Hussein. Failure to act would embolden other tyrants, allow terrorists access to new weapons and new resources, and make blackmail a permanent feature of world events. the United Nations would betray the purpose of its founding and prove irrelevant to the problems of our time. And through its inaction, the United States would resign itself to a future of fear. That is not the America I know. That is not the America I serve. We refuse to live in fear. This nation, in World War and in Cold War, has never permitted the brutal and lawless to set history's course. Now as before, we will secure our nation, protect our freedom, and help others to find freedom of their own. Some worry that a change of leadership in Iraq could create instability and make the situation worse. The situation could hardly get worse for world security and for the people of Iraq. The lives of Iraqi citizens would improve dramatically if Saddam Hussein were no longer in power, just as the lives of Afghanistan's citizens improved after the Taliban. The dictator of Iraq is a student of Stalin, using murder as a tool of terror and control within his own cabinet, within his own army, and even within his own family. On Saddam Hussein's orders, opponents have been decapitated. Wives and mothers of political opponents have been systematically raped as a method of intimidation. And political prisoners have been forced to watch their own children being tortured. America believes that all people are entitled to hope and human rights, to the non-negotiable demands of human dignity. People everywhere prefer freedom to slavery, prosperity to squalor, self-government to the rule of terror and torture. America is a friend to the people of Iraq. Our demands are directed only at the regime that enslaves them and threatens us. When these demands are met, the first and greatest benefit will come to Iraqi men, women, and children. The oppression of Kurds, Assyrians, Turkomans, Shia, Sunnis, and others will be lifted. The long captivity of Iraq will end, and an era of new hope will begin. Iraq is a land rich in culture, resources, and talent. Freed from the weight of oppression, Iraq's people will be able to share in the progress and prosperity of our time. If military action is necessary, the United States and our allies will help the Iraqi people rebuild their economy and create the institutions of liberty in a unified Iraq at peace with its neighbors. Later this week, the United States Congress will vote on this matter. I have asked Congress to authorize the use of America's military, if it proves necessary, to enforce UN Security Council demands. Approving this resolution does not mean that military action is imminent or unavoidable. The resolution will tell the United Nations and all nations that America speaks with one voice and is determined to make the demands of the civilized world mean something. Congress will also be sending a message to the dictator in Iraq that his only choice is full compliance, and the time remaining for that choice is limited. Members of Congress are nearing an historic vote. I'm confident they will fully consider the facts and their duties. The attacks of September the 11th showed our country that vast oceans no longer protect us from danger. Before that tragic date, we had only hints of al-Qaeda's plans and designs. Today in Iraq, we see a threat whose outlines are far more clearly defined and whose consequences could be far more deadly. Saddam Hussein's actions have put us on notice, and there is no refuge from our responsibilities. We did not ask for this present challenge, but we accept it. Like other generations of Americans, we will meet the responsibility of defending human liberty against violence and aggression. By our resolve, we will give strength to others. By our courage, we will give hope to others. And by our actions, we will secure the peace and lead the world to a better day. May God bless America.
President Bush in Cincinnati, Ohio tonight, a speech running almost exactly 30 minutes. The president said, "I am not willing to stake one American life on trusting Saddam Hussein." The speech low-key but quite stern and in many ways very personal in regards to the Iraqi leader. The president described the Iraqi leader as a murderous tyrant, a homicidal dictator, addicted to weapons of mass destruction. And the president, in terms he has not before, nor has the administration before, to our ear at least, tied the possibility of military action against Iraq directly to the events of September 11th. "We refuse to live in fear," said the president. September 11th showed the country as vulnerable. Our senior White House correspondent, John King, is at the White House tonight, where he's been following the speech. John, did you hear much that was new in the speech tonight, or was it in many ways tying together a variety of themes that the president and other members of the administration have been making for the last, I guess, 3 or 4 weeks?
Very much, Aaron, as promised by the White House. Essentially, they said the president tonight would try to deliver what a prosecutor would do as a trial, a closing argument, if you will, just as Congress prepares to vote, just as the UN Security Council begins the deliberations over whether to adopt that tough new resolution the president is demanding. The president, as promised by the White House, methodically, calmly going through every question that he could think of anyway that the American people might ask. You were just discussing one. One question that comes up frequently is why 1 year to the day after the first airstrikes in Afghanistan with Osama bin Laden's whereabouts still unknown, why turn now to Iraq? The president saying that it would not be a distraction from the war on terrorism. Indeed, in his view, an urgent continuation of the war on terrorism. No blockbuster headlines out of this, no major new information. The White House is tonight releasing 2 previously classified satellite photographs showing, the administration says, some reconstruction work at Iraqi nuclear sites. You heard the president say a senior al-Qaeda official getting medical treatment in Baghdad within the past year, but no new blockbuster evidence. The president trying to pull together everything the administration knows, trying to influence first and foremost the vote in Congress. He's hoping for a big one in Congress. Then comes the much more difficult fight, the United Nations Security Council debate. But the president also noting, trying to make the case that war is not inevitable, that Saddam Hussein has a chance to save himself, the president said. That was noteworthy tonight, but the president said he did not think that would happen, and if the UN does not act, the president made clear that he will.
John, just picking up on one thing you mentioned, that is one of the audiences here is clearly the members of the UN Security Council. The president has yet to persuade the French and the Russians to go along with his idea. What is the White House saying about progress there and timeliness? When will a vote come?
Privately, the administration insists it is making some progress. The president spoke to President Putin of Russia earlier today. The administration says there is a consensus forming that there must be a new resolution. The debate now is over how strong that should be, how explicit it should be in putting forward the unfettered access or else being military strikes. The administration is a bit worried about the timetable. It wants a vote in the next week or 2. some indications from the United Nations that key members would like this to go on perhaps another 3 or 4 weeks. The administration does not like that, but they do believe they are making progress in that diplomacy. One of the ways the president is trying to nudge that along is by making it clear to the United Nations, if you want to have influence over a military campaign, if there is one, if you want to have influence over rebuilding Iraq, if that is what becomes necessary, get on the train now, if you will, because the United States will act outside of the United Nations blessing if the UN does not pass a new resolution that meets the president's demands.
John, thank you. Senior White House correspondent John King. We'll see you again at 10 o'clock Newsnight. Much of the rest of the night here devoted to reactions to the president's speech. Larry King Live coming up at the top of the hour. And our coverage of the president's speech continues now with Connie Chung tonight. We'll see you at 10 Eastern Time.
We'll pick up our analysis of tonight's speech in just a moment, but focusing on 2 of President Bush's intended audiences, the members of Congress who support Mr. Bush's courting and the international community, which will determine the UN reaction. But first, we want to get a quick update on a very disturbing story that's been developing all day. The manhunt around Washington, D.C. took on new urgency today as the sniper stalking that area struck his youngest target yet while hunting for prey outside a school. CNN national correspondent Bob Franken is in Bowie, Maryland.
Another suburban Maryland county, but a frighteningly similar story. This time, a 13-year-old student at a Prince George's County middle school was hit in the chest and abdomen by a single shot from an apparent sniper as he walked inside just after 8 in the morning. Unlike the 6 who have been killed in adjacent Montgomery County in the District of Columbia, this victim survived, like the woman shot Friday in Virginia. It took a day-long investigation before officials had the dramatic announcement. The shootings were connected.
The projectile that was recovered from our victim this morning has been linked to the other cases in the Washington metropolitan area.
The 13-year-old was medevaced to Washington Children's Hospital in critical condition, where doctors recovered remnants of the bullet during surgery for investigators to conduct their forensic tests.
In general, we don't do that, but because of the situation that we're confronted with in this community today, we did make a special effort to at least find a portion of the missile.
Investigators flooded the area. Specially trained dogs were brought in to sniff for gunshot residue. Police recruits were assigned to scour for evidence. The middle school itself had been empty during the morning as parents rushed to pick up their children.
I saw a lot of police officers, and all the teachers told us to run into the building, and teachers were closing up the windows, and they told us to stay away from the windows just in case it happened again. And a lot of kids were crying.
Other schools in the county stayed open under a so-called Code Blue, in which students were locked inside until they were released under heavy security at the end of the day. And police who've been investigating these shootings since last Thursday say they've reached a new low.
Now, all of our victims have been innocent, have been defenseless. But now we're stepping over the line because our children don't deserve this. So parents, please do your job tonight. Engage your children. Be there for them. We're going to need it.
Officials say they plan to reopen the school systems tomorrow, contending that the students are at least as safe in class as anywhere else. Connie?
Bob, tell us, how is that 13-year-old boy still in critical condition?
Still in critical condition, still stable condition. Something that hasn't changed. Doctors said this afternoon that the 8 hours from then, probably till about 10 o'clock tonight, will be vital.
All right, President Bush said that this was a senseless act. He also said cowardly. He also asked for some federal assistance. Can you tell us about that?
Well, the president made his announcement that the federal government was providing assistance, which we've already known. But tonight, the chiefs of all the different police jurisdictions in this area, D.C., Prince George's County, Montgomery County, formally asked under the Serial Killers Act, it's a federal law, asked the Attorney General to provide enhanced protection. And the federal government has made it very clear it will do whatever it can to help.
All right, thank you, Bob Franklin. And now the president's speech. One of the people Mr. Bush wanted to win over was California Congressman Mike Thompson. The House will debate this week how much support, how much leeway to give the president in confronting Iraq. Congressman Thompson is one of 3 Democratic representatives who just returned from Iraq. We also have Republican Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama with us, and they join us from Washington. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us.
My pleasure, Connie.
Congressman, we'll start with you. You obviously are opposed to the House resolution that would support an invasion of Iraq. Did you hear anything tonight that would cause you to change your mind?
Well, Connie, this is the most important vote that I'm ever going to cast, and possibly the most important vote that's ever been cast in Congress. Not only are we going to set up a situation where American soldiers are going to go to war and possibly die, but we're also establishing an international precedent where we're going to use first strike capabilities, preemptive first strike, in a situation where there appears to be no immediate danger to people here in the United States or to our allies.
Well, let's listen to something that President Bush said tonight, and you tell me if this doesn't provide you with the evidence that you want. Let's play a clip of it.
Some al-Qaeda leaders who fled Afghanistan went to Iraq. These include one very senior al-Qaeda leader who received medical treatment in Baghdad this year and who has been associated with planning for chemical and biological attacks. We've learned that Iraq has trained al-Qaeda members in bomb making, in poisons, and deadly gases. And we know that after September the 11th, Saddam Hussein's regime gleefully celebrated the terrorist attacks on America.
Congressman, doesn't that tell you that an invasion of Iraq is justified?
Connie, we haven't seen any proof that any of this has happened. I've sat through all the classified briefings.
You mean you don't believe what President Bush
services.
just said? With all due respect.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. I said that there has been nothing in the committee hearing briefings that have substantiated this. If there is substantiation, we need to see that in Congress, not hear it over the television monitor. No one is suggesting that Saddam Hussein is a good person, but we need to go in a multilateral effort with our allies. We need to go in, we need to first make sure that we get the inspectors in there and get the arms out of that country, away from him, and we need to work collectively with our allies through the Security Council.
Senator Sessions, Iraq is now saying that it will allow inspectors to inspect those presidential palaces. Would that be good enough? If all of those requirements are met, doesn't that mean that no invasion is necessary?
Well, I think the president has left that possibility open. I think he said clearly if there is a renunciation of weapons of mass destruction, a turning over of those weapons, a allowing the country to be thoroughly searched in all areas, that could avoid war. The problem is Saddam Hussein has not done that before. He's cheated and lied and manipulated before. He's proven himself to be utterly untrustworthy. So we got a difficult time here in deciding how we can proceed, but he has left the option open for a total renunciation of weapons of mass destruction could avoid a conflict.
Senator, there are other countries that are developing weapons of mass destruction. Why Iraq, and why Iraq now?
Iraq has used those weapons against its own people. The apologists for Iraq seem to forget that they killed 5,000 of their own people. They attacked Iran, and 1 million people died in that war. They attacked Kuwait, and we had to have an international effort to remove them. And we are still in essentially a state of war with Iraq. As the president noted, they fired at our airplanes 750 times. This is going on a daily basis. They violated the UN resolutions that saved the Saddam Hussein regime when the Gulf War ended. We were on the road to Iraq when he agreed to these restrictions, and he's failed to follow them. So I think the president is right to confront this matter, be straight right up with the American people and with the UN and with the world and with Saddam Hussein. We cannot continue this way.
Congressman Thompson, there are those who believe that you and your 2 colleagues who went to Iraq came back with the basic position of President Bush may be trying to tell you something that in his effort to get approval for an invasion in Iraq that you shouldn't believe. So it sounds almost as if you're asking the American public, believe Saddam Hussein, don't believe President Bush.
Absolutely not, Connie. Saddam Hussein is a bad guy. We need to make sure that we're able to get the arms away from him, but I just do not believe, unless there's an immediate threat to Americans, that we need to do a preemptive first strike. It would set back 200 years of constitutional democracy in this country. We need to take action, but we need to do it with the United Nations, with the Security Council, and we need to first go through all the diplomatic options available before we go to war.
Don't you think that the United States is doing that, though?
We should be doing that, and we should continue to do it. And until there's all the options are used, we should not send our American soldiers into a war zone where all the generals have told us repeatedly we're going to see warfare that we haven't seen since World War II. Urban warfare in Baghdad, and we're sure to sustain a lot of casualties, and I want to avoid that if we possibly
Senator
can.
Sessions, a CNN poll shows that 49% of the American public do not believe that all the diplomatic avenues have been exhausted and fear that they would not be exhausted.
Well, I think the President has said again that he is working diplomatically in every way possible. He's had world leaders to his ranch in Texas, to Washington. Colin Powell has been all over the world meeting with world leaders. He's talking to them by the phone. He's doing everything possible to build, and is succeeding, really, in gaining support in the Middle East, with quite a number of countries that are cooperating with us, and I think he's making progress throughout the world stage. But we ought not to allow our policy to be totally blackballed by a single vote in the UN of the Security Council, whether Russia or France or China. If just one of those countries says no and vetoes a resolution, we do not have UN support. So
we're going to get a pulse beat now of Russia and France. So I'll interrupt you so that we can move on to our international correspondents. Thank you, Senator Sessions. Thank you, Congressman. We appreciate both of you being with us.
Thank you very much.
Now, what is the reaction from Iraq and overseas in countries that could make up part of a coalition against Iraq? Joining us now from Iraq, Baghdad Bureau Chief Jane Araf. And we also have senior European political correspondent Robin Oakley in London and Jim Bitterman in Paris. Starting with Jane. I know it's in the middle of the night there, but has there been any official reaction from Iraq?
Well, Connie, official reaction takes a long time to filter down because, of course, it filters down from the top, from the palace. Iraqi officials just don't react unless they get the word exactly what they're supposed to say. Now, there's likely to be quite a bit of reaction among the Iraqi people when they wake up in a few hours. They're not going to hear about this speech from their own media, but a lot of them do tune in to foreign radios, and they will be heartened by that reference of President Bush to war not being imminent or inevitable. They will, however, cast some doubt on his reference that America is a friend to the Iraqi people. That's something that they have not seen in the past 11 years. And it's really hard to overemphasize the very deep distrust that most Iraqis have of U.S. intentions. Connie?
Jane, have the members of the public prepared or provided any precautions in the event of a war?
They have, in a sense, as far as they can. A lot of people are stocking up on water. They're stocking up on food if they can, although part of the tragedy of this country is that a lot of people don't have money to buy more than the food they need for the next week or so. The government is encouraging them to take precautions. It distributes rations to every Iraqi citizen and has since the Gulf War, and it's now extending those rations for 3 months instead of the usual month. It is preparing its people for the possibility of war. But having said that, this is a country that has been through a lot. It's faced a lot, and people here have come to the realization that there's really not very much they can do. Now, there's a real feeling of tension here because although the threat is looming over them, they're not sure when it's going to happen or what's going to happen. In fact, some Iraqis are saying if there is going to be war, they just wish it would come. They really feel like there's not much they can do about it except sit and wait. Connie?
Jane, is there any sense that Saddam will be overthrown internally?
Very, very little. That's been the key question over these last few months, and indeed the key question over the past 10 years. Part of the reason he is still in power after all of this is he has a very effective system of control. Now, President Bush was warning Iraqi generals and other military officers that they could face war crime charges if they followed the orders of the Iraqi president. Now, faced with either the threat of execution or the threat of a war crimes tribunal, that threat is not likely to make much impact here. The bottom line is that the Iraqi president trusts very few people, has a very strict system of security and control, and is very unlikely to allow anyone to get close enough to him to topple him.
All right.
Connie?
Thank you, Jana Raff. And now on to Robin Oakley. Robin, tell us, we know that Tony Blair is in lockstep with President Bush. What about the British public?
The British public are essentially concerned, Connie, with whether there is United Nations backing for any action. 60 to 70% of the British public will back action that is fully authorized by the United Nations. But only 20 or 30% are willing to back action if it becomes a case of the UK and the US going it alone. Connie.
And Robin, I know that Russia is critical and France is as well. There is some feeling that as Russia goes, so will France.
Well, there remain worries right across the continent, I think, about any kind of unilateral action. Russia is a key to whatever happens in the Security Council, and if George Bush can persuade the Russians to go along with any actions, then you can bet that he will have persuaded others to go along too. I think a lot of European leaders will have taken comfort from the tone of George Bush's speech on this occasion. They will have taken comfort from the fact that he's talking about war not being inevitable, as Jana Raff was saying from Baghdad. I think that was important to the Europeans who'd seen him up until now as somewhat trigger happy. That really, they will take comfort from that, but I think they still feel that George Bush has to make the case in greater detail. He's rather swept aside those questions of whether greater instability would be created in the Middle East, and really, particularly with Tony Blair, who's been pushing for a Middle East peace conference, I think the European leaders who live much closer to events in the Middle East than those in the White House would have liked more said about the wider Middle East questions in this speech. Connie.
Robin Oakley, thank you. On to Jim Bitterman in Paris. Jim, I know it's in the middle of the night, but any reaction from the French government?
Connie, at this hour, no clear heads for any official reaction or unofficial reaction. It's just about 3 o'clock in the morning here. I do say there are a couple things about the speech that struck me, knowing what I do about what the President Chirac has said about the French position. Basically, he laid this out in an interview about 3 days before George Bush laid out the U.S. position at the United Nations, and it's stayed consistent ever since. There are two red lines as far as the French are concerned. One is the question of regime change. They say absolutely that is against all international law, and George Bush came close to stepping over that red line. He said it was the only sure way that, in fact, one could be certain that weapons of mass destruction were going to be destroyed once and for all. And the other red line is the idea of linking, having a certain link for military action with the weapons inspection procedure. The French believe there should be a two-stage process. The weapons inspectors should go into Iraq, should have a chance to do their job, and then if they can't do their job, another decision should be taken that they can't do their job by the Security Council, and then military action. At that point, the French have said that they will be happy to take part in military, or probably not happy to take part, but they would take part in military action if the United Nations sanctions it. But they want to see this two-step approach because there are these conditions. Perhaps there could be an honest disagreement about what compliance with weapons inspection would mean, and I think we heard George Bush lay on a new criteria tonight when he said that families and members of the government should be allowed to leave the country, leave Iraq, to be interviewed. Now, I don't think I've heard that before, and I'm sure that is one that's going to be very difficult for the Iraqis to comply with.
All right. Jim Bitterman, thank you. Jana Raff and Robin Oakley, we appreciate all of your input. And when we come back, a little perspective on what lies ahead. Don't go away.
CNN tomorrow, inside the hunt for the Maryland sniper. Plus, the nation reacts to President Bush's speech on Iraq. CNN tomorrow, 7 a.m. Eastern.
Acura of Salem, who can you turn to for the car of your dreams?
Jim All for Valley Motors and Acura Salem, home of Salem's finest pre-owned vehicles. Mercedes SL, C-Class, E-Class, S-Class, and ML, Lincoln LS, and Town Cars. Acura TL, and CL. Come in and see how easy it is for you to drive one home today at Valley Motors and Acura Salem.
Acura of Salem.
Only in Oregon, where every year thousands of small business owners earn money from the sale of lottery games, which allows them to invest in their communities, their businesses, and their employees.
You're too much.
Lottery games are based on chance and should be played for entertainment only.
My family sure had to tighten its belt in this recession. I think we should expect our government to do the same. But there's a responsible approach to that process, and I want to help protect those essential services that touch all of us and our community. Public schools, public safety, affordable health care. We need to balance the state budget fairly and in an accountable way that doesn't mean more pain for those who have already been hit the hardest. That's my bottom line.
Learning that you have cancer is devastating. Learning that for treatment you'll have to travel to Portland every weekday for 6 to 8 weeks makes it even more difficult. For years, Tuality Healthcare has worked to provide a full spectrum of cancer services. Introducing the new Tuality OHSU Cancer Center, now providing state-of-the-art radiation therapy right here in Western Washington County. The new Tuality OHSU Cancer Center in Hillsborough, because fighting cancer is hard enough without fighting traffic.
This is CNN. This is CNN.
We're going to bring back our senior political analyst now to give us a broader view of the president's speech, Bill Schneider. Bill, the president talked about not having a smoking gun. How do you analyze what he was the message he was trying to get across?
What the president is trying to do is to get America to speak with one voice to the rest of the world, to show the world that the United States is united. Towards that end, he has to answer the Democratic critics like Congressman Thompson, whom we just heard from, who said preemptive first strikes are not in the American tradition. What the president said was, we can't wait for a smoking gun, which could come in the form of a mushroom cloud. He even quoted former President John F. Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis, who said, we no longer live in a world where only the actual firing of weapons constitutes a sufficient challenge. He associated himself with JFK and, remarkably, with Bill Clinton. He said two presidents, I and my predecessor, Bill Clinton, were both for regime change. That was his way of trying to marshal support from Democrats to get a virtually unanimous vote, or as close to it as possible, from Congress.
And Bill, we just heard our Baghdad correspondent say that there is no talk of toppling Saddam within Iraq. I mean, that's just not a possibility. And yet we heard Ari Fleischer talk about it and suggest it, and tonight President Bush did as well.
That was a remarkable part of his speech in which the president said, quote, if Saddam Hussein orders cruel and desperate measures, his generals would be well advised to refuse such orders. What he's saying is that he's calling for a coup within Iraq. The generals are very unlikely to do that unless the Allied forces are at the gates of Baghdad, and they realize that if they don't overthrow Saddam Hussein, they'll have to pay a price from the United States and the Allies who are going to win the war. So he's advising those generals, if you know what's good for you, you'll turn against Saddam Hussein and you'll get him out of power yourselves. That's a remarkable charge, but he's calling for a coup d'etat. My only question is, how can we be sure that the generals are going to hear what the president said tonight? Iraq is a very heavily censored country.
Exactly, and the likelihood is that it wouldn't. Any final thoughts in 15 seconds?
I think this is the reverse of the Gulf War. In the Gulf War, the UN voted quickly. It was a big struggle to get a vote of Congress. This time he's going to get an easy vote of Congress. The tough vote is going to get other countries and the UN to support us.
All right. Thank you so much, Bill Schneider. Always a pleasure to have you with us. CNN's coverage of the president's speech on Iraq continues with Larry King Live next. Larry's guests include Senators John McCain, Robert Byrd, Dianne Feinstein, John Warner, and John Kyle. Plus, Representatives Chris Shays and Jane Harman and former Senator George Mitchell. At 10 Eastern Time, Aaron Brown will be back with full political analysis on Newsnight with John King and Suzanne Malveaux. Tomorrow on this program, we'll have an exclusive interview. The man Saddam Hussein sends to deal with the world, Iraq's ambassador to the United Nations. Thank you so much for joining us. Larry King Live is next. We thank you for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
Saddam Hussein must disarm himself, or for the sake of peace, we will lead a coalition to disarm him.
The president goes prime time with his case for action against Iraq. How did he do? Tonight, a special Larry King Live, The View from the Hill, with congressional heavyweights from both sides of the aisle. Joining us from the Senate, Arizona Republican, decorated Vietnam War veteran John McCain, West Virginia Democrat and President Pro Tem of the Senate Robert Byrd, Republican John Warner of Virginia, Democrat Dianne Feinstein of California, Republican John Kyle of Arizona, and Maine Democrat George Mitchell, the former Senate Majority Leader who won the Presidential Medal of Freedom for helping bring peace to Northern Ireland and who wrote the Mitchell Peace Plan for the Middle East. And from the House of Representatives, Connecticut Republican Chris Shays